All right, ready.
John, we have Paul, Chris, me, and you.
Good morning. See me?
Do you hear me, John?
No.
Yeah, four.
Missing Chris and
I'm on.
I'm here.
Okay, where's Kelly now? Smith is here.
do we have Chris online?
Chris is in the participants list.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All right, let's do this. Let me start off by saying that I'm going to use on all votes and everything else a roll call vote primarily for Barbie's benefit, and I'll just go down the list alphabetically. And so let me just go down that list and get a yay from everybody who's here. That'll be a good way to start right at this moment to determine the quorum. Paul, are you still here? Is Paul still with us, Paul Capello?
Yes, I'm here. Just give me a moment to find the unmute button.
Okay. All right. And then we have Kelly.
I'm here.
Okay. Michael Lavelle.
I'm here.
Mark Peterson.
He's going to be absent. He sent me an email saying he's out of town and would not be able to attend.
Okay. And Chris Smith.
Here.
All right, you're there? Okay. So we do have a quorum. And so I'm going to call this meeting of the Oregon Planning Board to order at 6:33. And as I mentioned, I'm going to, on all the votes or anything, I'm going to call a roll call vote, so that to help Barbie. We have the agenda. Any discussion regarding that? Anybody have any comments? Well, hearing no comments, I'm going to make a motion to adopt the agenda. If I can find a second.
I will second it, John.
All right.
Mike, second it.
So
Mike,
Michael?
second it, Barbie.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Adoption of the meeting minutes of April 21st. I saw that I had one comment on that.
Okay.
On page 2, it was it looked like a repeat of the motion for the motion to elect me as the chairman, but there was not one showing up, Barbie, for the motion for Kelly Cates.
No, it's on there, John.
It is?
It's on there.
Oh, all right.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was just the nominations on there. I beg your pardon.
Yeah. It's not
Yeah,
there.
the nomination, both nominations were there. Then there was a motion to elect on page 1.
I see.
Oh, I see what you're talking about. That should say Kelly. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. That should say Kelly.
Okay.
Also, John, or Barbie, one thing I saw is that on page 1, or was it? I'm sorry.
Let's finish with John first before I get
That was all that I had.
Okay, now Michael, what's the change?
I'm sorry. Oh, as the vice chair, oh no, I'm sorry, that's correct. Oh no, as the chair, Mark Peterson nominated Kelly Cates. I think it was Chris, if I'm not mistaken, that nominated Kelly.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. That's what I remember.
Okay, well, maybe, you'll need to, tell me your name when you make a motion so I can distinguish the voice.
What's that? Barbie, I was just pointing out a change that it was Chris Smith, who nominated Kelly as vice chair, not Mark
Yeah.
Peter, or chair. Okay.
Right. Maybe it would be helpful for me if you make a motion, tell me your name so that I can distinguish what the voice is. Mark and Chris sound alike on the recorder, so that may be the reason why I picked up on that.
Understood. So it would change to Chris Smith. This is Michael.
Yeah.
Or Chris, Chris, you can do it since you nominated her.
Sure.
I'll make the change. I'll strike Mark Peterson and I'll add Chris Smith. So that'll be a change.
Okay. There we go.
Is the vice chair correct? Do I have the right people there?
Yes, that was Mark Peterson.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the way I remembered as well.
Then I'll make the change in the motion for Kelly Cate as vice chair person.
One other change, Mark, when you're ready.
All right. So does anyone have any other changes?
I do. This is Chris Smith.
Okay.
The vote for Tom Jones was not unanimous.
Chris, I'll explain the voting part. Unless they excuse you from voting, your vote is still a yes vote.
Okay.
But if you would prefer that I would notate that you had a no vote, I'll be happy to add that. But by parliamentary procedures, that it's still a yes vote. Unless they excuse you from voting.
That's fine. If you don't mind adding the annotation.
Yes, I'll be happy to. I'll be happy to add that.
Thank you.
This is Paul. I also have a note on 6B, county comments on ETJ. We pointed out there was another lot besides the church nestled within Marvin Gardens. The description here speaks of lots with an S, but doesn't then say what other lot was added to the discussion.
Okay.
Right. We added a second lot to the request that we talked to the county about. I don't remember how to describe it.
Yeah,
It's not just the church.
Yeah, so we added to the discussion the Shimron Lane neighborhood, the little small neighborhood there, Weddington Forest, and then a few lots to the right of that. Basically, what is surrounded by Weddington Chase and Newtown Road.
Okay, so I would suggest that we
I'm a
somehow,
little confused with that discussion. So could someone kind of explain what lots you were identifying as nestled in there, because it's not what's in the report. So can I just kind of clarify that for me?
Yeah, those lots weren't in the report. They were added as a part of the discussion. So we're
Okay,
talking
so what are those lots?
we're talking about, let's see, perhaps I can pull it up on screen share. If you give me 1 second, I'll share my screen.
I don't have screen share. I don't.
Oh,
have
okay.
screen share,
So, okay. I'll describe it then. So over by Weddington Chase,
You just tell me about what they are?
yeah, over by Weddington Chase, there are the parcels that make up the church. Then we also added the parcels that make up Weddington Forest neighborhood, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parcels to the east of those.
Okay. And can you just send me an email to clarify?
Yes,
that so I
I'll
can-
gladly. I'll send it to you tonight
Okay, perfect.
with a map as well.
I'll add other law. Okay. Any other changes to the minutes?
Hearing none, I would make a motion, we accept the minutes as amended. We have a second by anybody?
second it. Kelly seconds it.
Okay, all right, now let me go down the list. Paul, how do you vote?
Yay. Oh, yes.
Okay, Kelly,
Yes.
all right, Michael,
Yes.
and Chris Smith,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. Okay, public comment period. Do we have anybody signed up? Rohit?
There's no one here.
There is someone signed up.
I actually, I'm sorry, I'm Ann Papistrat. I did sign up for a public comment this evening with Barbie.
Okay.
Yes.
Then, if you would, for our record, your name and address.
Yes, I'll be happy to give it again. Yes, I provided it for Barbie yesterday, but my name is Ann Priebus Papistrat. Do you want me to spell the last name, or do you have it, Barbie?
If Barbie's got it,
It's
that's
not
fine.
necessary. It's not necessary. I have it written down, and I have his address. So,
Terrific.
but if you,
Okay.
if you don't mind, for the record, go ahead and give me your address anyway, so that people that are listening, because they won't see the minutes until after they're posted.
Sure, I'll be happy to. My address is 1024 Chesterfield Place, Marietta, Georgia, 30064.
Okay?
All right, you have 3 minutes,
3 minutes.
and just for your information, the board members will not respond or anything.
Terrific. Great. Hopefully it won't take quite that long. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, and I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Ann Priebus Papistrat. My father was one of the original purchasers of our family's land on Newtown Road. Not sure if you're familiar with it. I'm hoping you are. I believe you all have, many of you have seen it on the plan. He and 2 other relatives who were home builders at the time purchased the land, which is just over 21 acres, in the early 1970s. Together with my brother George and my sister Maria, we represent the ownership of the Priebus property. Obviously, we've seen many dramatic changes to Marvin over these years, and we were so pleased several years ago when we heard the early discussion about the potential for a town center, or the VCD. We applaud the council and this planning committee for your efforts and for prioritizing the development of this district. We feel it will be such an enhancement for the Marvin community, giving neighbors places to gather, providing a more walkable environment, and helping the village of Marvin create its own identity that will separate it from other areas and neighborhoods. It will have tremendous appeal to current residents and will draw others to it as it highlights the village's unique landscape and sense of community. We'd like for you to know that our family supports this vision and would like to do whatever we can to promote its development. We know the committee is currently in the process of determining boundaries and how the district will serve the community best. We want you to know that we're very open-minded on how our property is developed. We're very interested in developing our property in a way that will support your vision and promote the best of Marvin. The land is essentially a blank canvas at this time. It's unusual to find a parcel this size that can be shaped so freely without working around existing structures. We're very interested in potential commercial development related to the VCD, but would also be very interested in being a transitional property that would lie just outside the district with a blend of light commercial and residential use. We would certainly like to be a part of the VCD. If this is not possible, we'd like for the board to consider adding the Priebus property to the VCD on the future land use map. We want you to know directly from us that we support the development of the VCD and would like the opportunity to partner with the Village of Marvin to achieve its vision for the VCD and surrounding properties. We appreciate your consideration of these items, and feel free to contact us directly with any questions you may have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is anyone else signed up? Barbie?
No, she was the only one that signed up.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'll close the public comment period and go to items of discussion. Item number 1 is discussion of third-party communication. And I would like to open this conversation with my own comments, and then I'll turn it over to each of the board members. In light of the unsolicited emails in regard to the planning board and the extensive back and forth it's generated on Nextdoor, I need to discuss this with all the board members. Are any of you unaware of these emails and the ensuing Nextdoor chatter? So everybody's aware of it? Let me start with a comment.
John, Kelly Keats is not aware of it, and I'm pretty sure Paul also raised his hand.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I was looking, I didn't see.
We're not on Nextdoor.
I guess the way I would put it is, I did see something go out about the village council, I'm sorry, the village district, the village center district. But in terms of banter, I don't know that I would have been aware of all of that.
Okay, well, there was a fairly extensive email that was sent out by the Marvin Village News, if are you aware of them, in which they stated that, let me read. Well, it says, welcome to the new Marvin Village Center, courtesy of your country club-based Class A investor, Marvin Council. Pay close attention to the uses which this plan would allow in Marvin's Village Center. Then imagine the traffic that would be generated on Marvin's already congested roadways. It's not a quaint handful of country uses surrounding parks and trails as was originally imagined. This is a commercial development proposal being generated and funded with your tax dollars. And it states here that we'll have, in addition to dentist office, chiropractors, veterinarian, massage parlors, acupuncture, assisted living, daycare, dry cleaning, UPS stores. In addition to that, it says that we're planning on an auto parts store, a mattress store, beauty salons, grocery store, being a Walmart neighborhood market, a bank, a Walgreens, Ace Hardware, and Shoe Carnival. So, you know, that, you know, is totally contrary to anything that we've gone on. I mean, you know, let me start by stating the comment I made to the council last Tuesday night. When I was first appointed to the planning board, I said to myself, now, this may be difficult because I could tell there were totally different opinions and attitudes represented. Though to my surprise and pleasure, this has worked very well. We discuss each item from each perspective, negotiate amongst ourselves, and then and only then do we reach a consensus opinion. It's worked extremely well in the past. When one of the board members decides to go out and spread untruths or at best half-truths, then it creates an atmosphere that the other members of the board will not be willing to voice their opinion for fear of being misquoted. This meeting and all meetings of the planning board are fully open meetings to the public, and we have no secrets. But we discussed many thoughts in the open that have absolutely no chance of being recommended. Plus the fact that just because the board may recommend something does not mean that the council is going to agree with us and proceed on that recommendation. I think that we should adopt a policy that we agree on that will address how we as board members disseminate information to the public. And I'm open always to your thoughts and opinions. And just for your information, the, one of the quotes on the next door in response to that was from Christopher Smith, who stated he's on the Marvin Village Planning Board, and thought it was appropriate to respond. And the diagram discussed is consistent with plans presented to the Planning Board on January 21st. These plans were presented to the full board by the town planner as being active under discussion by all the property owners in the village, and a diagram remarkably similar to this was circulated. We discussed it at length because the scale of the proposed development is much larger than several board members had anticipated. And it goes on, that's just the first paragraph.
John,
Any comments from anybody?
I have a comment. This is Kelly, because I'm the only female. Hopefully you recognize my voice. I didn't see any of that. You know, some of what they listed is up for consideration, but there's a lot on there that we would never consider. Obviously a Walmart, a shoe carnival. Anyway, some of that was just absurd, but I will say that the map that Rohit presented was actually sent out to everyone in Marvin, so the public gets a lot of the same information that we get in the agenda packet. So you know, I would just be, while I haven't seen what's out there, just be careful that we're not necessarily disseminating information if it's given to the public willingly. So just be careful of accusing anyone of that. And that's all I have to comment on, but it's disappointing.
John, let me just add that over the weekend, I was asked many times through email and conversationally by my neighbors as a resident.
I'm having difficulty hearing you, Chris. Can you get closer or something? It's like it's an echo. I'm sorry.
So I'll just note that I personally was asked many times what I thought about that from neighbors and other residents from Marvin, knowing that I'm on the planning list. So I got a lot of emails. And there isn't anything that I commented about that wasn't openly discussed, presented as plans, and discussed as plans. This is the planning board. I'm a member of the planning board, and Rohit is the town planner. When materials are presented to me and described as plans, or labeled as plans, and we discuss them as plans, then they are plans. The only thing I commented about on next door is that I've seen plans that look like it. I didn't comment about shoe carnival. I didn't comment about anything. I don't know the commentary from the Marvin Village News. I thought it was appropriate to mention that I have seen this, that Rohit had presented it, and had mentioned this at least one conversation with the property owners. That's it. So if you're going to craft a policy that prohibits that or suggest that I don't, but I keep my mouth shut about what happens in the planning board, just remember, this stuff's public. To the best of my recollection, and it might have been the February meeting, I don't know. I'd have to review the materials, but to the rest of the public, those plans are published, to Kelly's point, as part of the agenda items, and are disseminated to Marvin residents with very little qualification and very little description, and otherwise no context. So I don't know what other people are doing, but when I'm asked what I know about plans that we discuss in the planning board, and in my capacity as a member of the planning board, I'm going to tell them what I saw. That's it, John. So if you're gonna craft a policy otherwise, I'd really like to hear.
Well, the way I read it is that you agreed with everything that the Marvin Village News put out, that we were ready to build a Walgreens and a Walmart neighborhood food market and these other items in the village center. And that's can be no further from the truth.
I didn't say that, John. You can infer anything you want. That's not what I said.
Rohit, was the one thing I was concerned about, I saw one of the plans that they were sharing had a brew pub on the corner. Is that something you did, Rohit?
No, that's not something that I've ever been privy to, and I did not make the map or the accompanying text from that flyer.
What did it have? You said in the upper corner? I missed it.
It had a brew. I mean, that's the problem. And I don't think that plan was ever submitted in front of the planning board. So, Chris, I don't think that's correct, that everything that was on there was in front of the planning board. I don't remember seeing it. Rohit doesn't remember doing it. So I think that was a fabricated plan. And that's the problem here.
You and I have talked about it. We've talked about it on record.
We have a drawing with a brew pub on a village center plan.
That would be false. I've never created anything like that.
Hey, can I make a suggestion, guys? Can we step back from this particular fact pattern and sort of just try now to talk in a more general way of looking at this? And the question I think that's sort of being asked is, listen, we are citizens and we are a member of a board. And so we have rights and obligations in both of those settings. And I think what we're trying to do here is figure out a way to operate in both of those in a proper way, right? I mean, as a citizen, I can say anything I want, theoretically, right? As long as it's not illegal. I can say, yeah, they're thinking about a brew pub, even if they're not. And then ultimately I'll be proved wrong down the road, but I can say that as a citizen. As a planning board member, maybe I can't because, it wasn't brought into the planning meeting. So I guess what I'm trying to think about here is there some way that we can talk about our obligations as planning board members that, again, I'm just trying to move away from this particular fact pattern, even though I just mentioned the brew pub a second ago. I know this, I generally don't comment publicly, but I don't have people asking me, to be frank. I'm sort of the anonymous member here. I don't get a lot of emails and people asking me to comment about stuff. But I would probably try to stay away from it just because, there's a sort of a conflict here.
Oh, I think that's correct. I mean, if in that exchange, in that next door exchange, Kim Vandenberg, who is a councilwoman, commented, but not as a councilwoman, but as a citizen. I think the concern there was that Chris came on and stated that he was a planning board member and commenting for the planning board. I think that's the difference. Kim is also a citizen and she is a councilwoman. She commented and she just provided information from the council meetings. And I think,
what he's saying, though, is that he's commenting as to what he saw, and that's not an illegitimate thing to say, right? But we also have a record. We've got minutes, we've got agenda, and so part of my reaction to this ought to be to tell your neighbor, listen, we've got minutes and agenda. You can access those and see what was presented. As Kelly just said, a lot of this is public. As a matter of fact, all of it. Right?
Yeah, but not everything presented. I think that's the problem. Not everything presented from that Marvin Village News or from that was accurate. That's why I asked Rohit if there was a drawing that had a brew pub on it, and Rohit never did it. And commenting as a planning board member saying that everything that you've seen has been presented, I think is not correct. That's my problem.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I guess I'll also say is, there have been times, I suspect, where you've looked at an email and thought you understood what it was saying, but you didn't look down at the bottom of it and realize there was something that had been said, early in the chain that maybe you don't necessarily agree with. That can certainly happen. So, again, I'm just trying to think of a way that as a planning board member, we can be circumspect in how we respond to questions, because we're going to get them. And we also have rights to speak as citizens and even as a planning board member. I have a right to say I saw what I saw if it's public, and everything we do is public.
Oh, maybe one of the things that we can do, because we've talked about this before, especially in outside judicial, there are certain circumstances and situations where we can't comment at all. If it's a quasi judicial, situation. But I think maybe just as a planning board, if we need to comment on, I'm not on Nextdoor just for this very reason, because it just seems like insanity. I hear about all kinds of crazy stuff, but let's just comment as ourselves, as citizens. And if someone wants us to comment as a planning board member, they should submit it in a more formal way, through an email to Rohit or however. But there's a difference between formally responding to something and responding to something just casually as a citizen. And I think that if you're going to comment as a planning board member, let's have people, I always tell people, come to the planning board meeting, sign up for public comment, submit your questions, submit your request, in a public forum. So, anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Maybe $50.
Yeah, I think that's, probably a good approach, in that, we need to be cognizant of the voice that we are using. Are we using our voice as a citizen or as a planning board member? But, I think the post on Nextdoor came across, at least to my reading, as reinforcing and standing up for the map that was presented in this mailer. That it was in fact correct. Didn't say it exactly like that, but he came across as, I've seen a map that looked just like that. That's...
And that is a true statement. And we disseminated a map that looked a lot like that in one of the agenda letters.
But it came, it didn't have any of these uses written down on it. Definitely didn't have brew pub, and it didn't have, according to this map, at least part of the area on the map as a higher density retail development area versus other areas. And that's not, I don't think that's ever been in any of the conversations that I recall being held at the planning board.
Okay, well, John, I'm going to ask you to keep the idle chit-chat to a minimum then, because we have talked about a brew pub in the January meeting. Mike Laville was sitting to my right and was talking about the brew pub on that corner. And I said something like, oh, you realize that if the context was the land use plan and traffic and generate it. And I said, well, that's going to generate traffic at a different time of the day than we're typically accustomed to.
We have talked about a drinking establishment in that area. I don't know about it. I can't remember if it was a brew pub or not, but I remember. I think Mike talked to me about drinking and shopping. That's all I remember.
It's just not something that's imminent, and I don't think it's anything that, we should put out on Nextdoor as a planning board member that we're going to vote on, or that's something we're considering, because our discussions sometimes get, we chide each other and we have discussions because we're there for 3 hours. I mean, I think it's been taken out of context there. And Chris, you went on, I think, another problem, you went on Nextdoor and you took a shot at, the council and what I deemed to be Rohit because they were having problems with the live stream. I mean, that's not necessary.
Okay.
But, sort of back up to, even if we had in conversations, in any of the conversations said, it'd be a good place for a brew pub or whatever, we have not gotten to the zoning ordinances even. We are hopefully just tonight going to start talking about the map.
Well, you're dodging the issue, John. The issue is that some resident or some group of residents created some sort of view that they gleaned from our own materials. That's the issue, not what I said. The issue is that there is a lack of context and a lack of transparency about what we're doing here. Anybody can listen to the tapes and they can hear what you and Mike Lavelle are describing as idle chatter. It has nothing to do with planning about this, that, and the other thing. And they can look at the materials that are posted as our agenda rules and do whatever they want with it, because there is no context, there's no description, there's no background, there's no status update. There is no indication within the context of any of that as to what it is we're doing. And I don't
So
think I'm shocked that people are.
So you feel it's appropriate to take it out of context then?
No, it's not. Then that's what we need to be talking about.
Isn't that what you did?
Put context around it.
You took it out of context. You're taking maybe what we had as a casual conversation and promoting it to say, well, this is what's going to happen.
So Mike, I'm not going to sit here. Hey, hold on. I am not going to sit here and pretend like you and I have not had detailed discussions about brew pubs on that corner. So don't act like you and I haven't had those conversations. And if it's you and I having these conversations, there must be dozens of other people who have heard you talk.
Well, how can you make that? How can you make that assertion, Chris?
Because it's a fact.
It's a fact.
Yeah, you and I have talked. Okay, let's pretend like you're not. Yeah. Guess that's what we're doing here.
I mean, I just don't understand why you're so angry, Chris. Well, maybe I do.
No, I'm not.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt this, but I do agree with Chris in that, and I even told Rohit this in I think our last meeting, but that map, the map that was disseminated, the hand drawing, the overlay, I agree that without context, that can be taken in a very different way than I believe Rohit intended it and that we discussed. Even when I first looked at it, I was like, oh my Lord, the way these boxes are drawn. And he was just drawing boxes, like that's all it was. But made it look like it was going to be like a 4-story office building. So we just need to be aware of and we don't, did the angels just sing? What was that? We just do need to be aware of, and that was kind of an isolated case. We don't normally, send out things like that. But we do need context because we don't want citizens seeing something like that and being able to misrepresent it, whether it's someone's agenda, that's they're pushing their own agenda. If the map is, very well explained and easily accessible to people with context, people can't take it out of context. So I think it's a good point, and I think we just need to be more conscientious when we put things like that in the agenda. And Rohit, I'm not quite sure how you would even go back and describe what that was. It was kind of like a talking point to get the conversation going. We knew that, but you can tell that now we're apparently having a Walmart and a shoe carnival. So everyone line up for your discount shoes.
If we adopt that philosophy, I think that we are going to sorely restrict what makes this group work is we discuss lots of different ways of, options, not really with any intent of most of them, but at least we are throwing huge parameters out before we zero in on what, it's whether it be the village center or anything else that we talk about. We get way, I won't say off track, but we really expand the perimeters of our conversations. But if we're afraid, if we have to be afraid that some of us are going to go out there and say, look at this is what was talked about, then we're not going to be able to have those conversations. And we're not going to be able to expand, to explore the whole universe of what we're looking at.
Yeah, and John, my comment was really around the map, because I do think that the agenda is pretty thorough. Rohit and Christina usually give background. They talk about what we want, what we want to discuss. But I think the map could have easily been taken out of context if someone saw it and they didn't understand what it was. So it was really more about the visuals. in this one particular map? Because it sounds like someone has taken it and made their own additions to it.
Well, like I said, you know, I think, you know, we need to be cognizant of what we say. And let's don't, you know, if there are wild things floating around out there, let's don't go out there and support those and say, yep, that's what was talked about. Yeah, it might have been, you know, brought up, but that was not the end result of our conversations.
We haven't gotten to the end results of our conversations yet.
I know it. That's the point I'm making here.
We haven't gotten to the middle.
So
We're just hoping
we can't have discussions. Everything we're saying is going to be jumped at and said, well, we said it in there, so it must be true. I mean, we can't have conversations. We can't talk about things. We can't say what if or what about that. Because if we do, now we're going to say, well, you said it at the planning board meeting.
Yes.
I'm disappointed that, you know, we have to have this conversation. You know, I thought, you know, as a group, we operate very well. We really operate on a 7-0 unanimous voting. We always talk through things. We always get things done and we find the way to do it. And we have these conversations that sometimes go one way and go the other way, but we come together as a group, and I'm proud of that group that we do it. And I think that's what we need to get back to. We have the discussions, we have disagreements, but we all come together for the common purpose of why we're there. And that's important.
All right, well, let's wrap this up with that understanding that we just need to be cognizant of, and let's don't, you know, support rumors, I guess is the best way to say it. All right.
Excuse me, but before we wrap this up, I'd like to add a few things from staff perspective, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
So we've also discussed internally how we will improve communication between us and between planning board and the public. One of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna put the Village of Marvin logo on everything that is official, so that the public can know that if they see something without the logo, it's not official. We're also going to put the word conceptual on everything until it's not conceptual. Just so that there's, you know, an improvement in what the public believes to be true and it's not true. And also, I also brought up the idea, and Christina liked this, to produce like a one-page, very digestible report of what happened in the planning board meeting and present it at the council meeting every regular session during the planning board report. How is that? So everyone's on the same page. We're going to start with this one. All right.
Good idea, Rohit. Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, let's move on. Update on the code reorganization.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. So, seeing nothing in the
pack. But before we move on, I just wanted to understand, Rohit, how will what you just described differ from sort of the minutes? And can't the minutes sort of serve as that purpose in the first place?
It could, but I guess one of the things this flyer did successfully is that it was very digestible. It had a lot of inaccuracies, but it was very digestible, and that's something that we could do in a positive way. We could present. I'm talking a 1-page, 2-page max, you know, very digestible summary of what the planning board did at their last meeting and present it to the council at their next regular session meeting.
Is this something that we'll have to approve, kind of like our minutes?
Do you want to do it that way? Because that does make sense.
I'm just asking because it's you know, it's I guess a sum. I would just be interested to see
if we don't approve it, then I think it's got to come from staff as staff's summary.
Yeah, staff summary. That makes sense.
Right, and then our minutes will stand as they do, and presumably they won't differ. But if they do, the minutes will be the ones that we approve.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'll err on the side of caution in those reports. You know, as I said, everything that's conceptual says conceptual on it. You know, just high level, you know, discussion, just so that the council is aware of the planning board's activities on a month-to-month basis. It was a few months, you know, between the time that council got up to date on planning board's activities, which is a way that this misinformation was allowed to thrive. It's a lack of communication. So I think this is a way that will help, you know, make sure everyone's on the same page.
Okay.
I actually
Yeah, so-
think it's a good idea for council to have a summary as well, a digestible summary.
Yeah. Hey, could you get stuff off the
Okay.
Okay, so
Code.
Yeah.
Reorganization.
So we're not ready to have that discussion today, as we talked about maybe being able to last meeting. So I wanted to bring up the two possibilities: one, calling a special meeting to discuss just this, and two, discussing it at at the next regular session. We really need to try to have this project finished by June 30th. It's a really big, you know, deadline for the fiscal year for this project to be paid. I think if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world, but we really need to make sure of that. So I would recommend, if you guys don't mind, calling a special meeting sometime in about 2 to 3 weeks from now, so that we can discuss the revisions of the code. Just, you know, get through all of them. I think there are about 10 to 15 of them, and it might take 2 to 3 hours.
Let's see, I think in the meeting or the minutes from the last meeting, it said we were waiting on the consultant to finish his work before we could even do that. What's that status?
Yeah, they're still working on it. They're almost done, they say, but it should be another maybe week or so.
And Rohit, did you have, I know Paul recommended having some sort of framework or summary around why certain, codes were being changed.
We're not at that point yet, unfortunately.
So,
So do we need to vote on whether we have an additional meeting?
well, let's see, our next regular meeting,
I think I heard Barbie say yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so our,
The only people the only way you can call a special meeting is if the chair or vice chair or two of the planning board members call a special meeting. That's a 48-hour notice. So, which means I'll have to have the day, the time, and the place in which you want to have the meeting. Of course, they'll probably be virtual, but yes, you'll have to vote on that, because this is a meeting that's not already scheduled on your meeting schedule.
but we can't call a special meeting at this time because the consultant's not finished.
In about 2 to 3 weeks, they would be finished. That's what I'm proposing. Well, go ahead.
You could still call a special meeting, just that, we're going to move to call a special meeting once the consultants are finished, and I would ask that it be outside of business hours, because I cannot be there if it's not. But why couldn't you do it for a future date?
Well, I don't know when the consultants are going to be finished, is the point I was making.
Could Barbie just not Rohit will let Barbie know, and Barbie will send out a doodle poll, and we'll go from there. But at least we all agree that we will do it.
And
Or Barbie, if someone makes a motion, do they have to have a specific date and time? Because that only has to happen 48 hours prior, though, right?
Yeah. I have to have the date and time in which you're going to have a special meeting.
yeah, I understand that, but
The thing would be, if you're going to do that, then tonight would not be the night for you all to call that. My suggestion would be is to see when the consultant would have the information and then determine whether or not you have enough time or to call a special meeting. I have to have a 48-hour notice.
Yeah, Barbie, that's the point I was making is, you know, we can't call one now because we don't know when it's going to be ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really don't have anything to vote on at this moment other than maybe a show of hands if how many are willing to entertain a special meeting.
Yeah, in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. You don't have to set up the meeting now, as John said.
Yeah.
But
So, you know, that's the point, you know, 3 weeks from now, 3 weeks from tonight would be the council meeting.
mm-hmm.
That wouldn't work. It would have to be a different day. You know, and then the week after that is our meeting.
So what I propose is that if there is enough interest for a special meeting somewhere in the 2 to 3 weeks from now time frame, I anticipate we'll get the results from the consultant in about a week, and then we can send out a doodle poll saying, okay, we've got the materials. Here is exactly what we'd be looking at a special meeting, and when can we set it up? And it would be set up in the frame of, you know, a week or two in advance of when we send out the doodle poll.
That's fine. Is anyone not willing to do it? I think that's a bigger question.
I can see everybody but Chris on a picture of it, so I could raise my hand. I know Kelly raised her hand. Michael, Paul.
Chris, are you good with a meeting?
I'm good with the meeting.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. So then that's just a consensus for now. The meeting is obviously not called. We'll send out a doodle
That's
poll.
all we can do at this moment.
We'll send out a doodle poll once we get the information from the consultant, with also having the information that the consultant gave me. All right, then. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Barbie, did you say that 2 of us have to call the meeting, or?
No, in order to call, the people that can call a special meeting is the chair, the vice chair, and 2 planning board members.
Not all together. Either the chair or the vice chair or 2 planning board
No,
members.
not all, that's not what I'm saying, not all together. The chair, the next one, or the vice chair, or 2 planning board members.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Thank you for clarification.
Who can call a special meeting, yes.
Okay. So when we know that it would be available, then we can
We can start
send
talking
out
about
the
dates.
doodle for a special meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Moving forward, review of the land use plan.
Okay. Great. So I think this is the part where we just, we talk about front to back, just the first 5 chapters, and I've highlighted some things that are different or will just remain, to be edited later. Somebody sent their revisions through email, and there was a good list of them, so I was wondering if you guys wanted to just go through the list or just incorporate those revisions.
Let's see. All did that, and I'll scan through them. I think they were grammatical and typographic things, I think,
Mm-hmm.
Paul,
Yeah, pretty much.
versus scope.
Yes.
Yeah, and I did not compare, because I didn't have my copy with me. I had a couple small things, and I'll send them to you, Rohit. There's no need in going through them, but they were also that same sort of thing.
Yeah.
A typographic error or a spacing error or something like that.
Yeah, I received that too, and I can see that all of them are just, there's a list of 13 of them, and all of them are just formatting. And also, speaking of formatting, I've been telling you, don't tell me about formatting, I'll do that last. Well, now is the time to tell me about formatting if you guys looked at it and found anything that you wanted to change in that regard.
I've got a question, and I think a general question for Rohit.
Yeah.
The yellow highlighted items, is that the latest changes you made, or?
Right. So on either they are some things that we will just discuss as this is not part of the submission. There's some maps and such that are still a work in progress. But I guess the only revision that I've made that wasn't discussed in the planning board meeting last time was that, this is kind of this is kind of silly, but I forgot to add the potential village center district as a future land use designation on page 7.
Okay.
So I added that in between last meeting and today, and this is obviously not binding. Even the 2004 land use plan does say that we will consider a village center district, and this is basically the same thing, to say that we will consider a village center district, not that there will be one.
Yes.
Doesn't write it into law,
Is
that's
there
what
a
I mean.
key to the coloring on the maps on page 7?
There is in the full version, but that's why I need to replace those maps entirely. So you don't have to worry about that for now.
Okay.
I think, can we do this? There's two things as far as, like I said, I'd like to see the text go to council for them to start their review.
Right, this is a review of the text.
Yeah, and let's designate this, like the maps specifically, as to be revised.
Okay, yes, I
So
understand
that they
that.
understand that.
They understand that, yep. Just like, kind of like I have on page 11, I said works in progress for one of the maps.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah, just like that, so that they don't get confused. And I think that every page, and this, I guess Barbie knows how to do it, you know, because I've seen them before, draft on it.
Oh yeah, just like in the back, kind of like overlaying the whole entire
Yeah.
page, just like the agenda says sometimes, it says draft.
Yeah.
Just like that, yeah, got it.
Hey, John and Rohit, I did have one comment. It is a grammatical change, but it points up a substantive question, and that is, you turn to page 32 in the report, in the land use plan. The heading on the top of the page says, consider limited development of pedestrian-oriented neighborhood-scaled commercial areas. But if you look at our core land policies on page 26, and you go to the item E, which seems to be what we're trying to document, that says support attractive pedestrian-oriented. So that leads back to the question of, originally I think we had support.
I think that too.
But then I think we tried to pull that back a little bit after the survey came out, that wait a minute, support is probably too strong a word, maybe we want to change that to consider limited. So I think we probably changed it on page 32, but didn't change it in the core land use policies. Does everybody remember it that way?
I do.
I remember a lot of conversation, yeah.
So would you like me to change that? E,
Well,
support,
I'm
change to
just looking,
consider?
because everybody's seeing what I'm saying, is that on page 32, the heading says consider limited development of, but that's supposed to mirror the core principle or policy, which is listed on page 26. And by the way, that core policy on page 26, that list, is repeated in the executive summary.
Yes, on page 6.
All three places will have to be the same. But the substantive question is, I believe we changed the list from support attractive to consider limited. Just wanted to pull back a little bit based on what we saw in the survey. That's my recollection. I want to know what other people thought.
I would agree with that. Any other comment?
The consider limited, this is Michael.
I can't remember, but I'm good with that.
You know, Paul, you can never leave this board. I don't know about the rest of them, but I count on you for that stuff all the time.
The benefits are just too much, Paul. Golden handcuffs. Hey, Rohit,
Yes.
this is something minor, but it kind of goes back to context. On page 21, the mark within Trader Joe's picture at the top of future commercial development.
Oh yeah.
I would maybe consider doing a smaller commercial. It's got, yeah, that says gives the wrong impression.
Got it.
While I love World Market, I don't want one in the, you know.
I might have you do
You
this.
agreed, I didn't know what that picture was of, but I did make a note that we should probably change it to something a little more Marvin-like.
Yeah, understood.
And I believe that section is about commercial development within the in the commercial district, correct? Like on the edge, like the railroad
Right.
area.
This section is about outside of Village Center, but still, you'll want it to represent what you're going to do if you do consider it. So, yeah.
Yeah, or even put a picture of what is currently there, you know, like that coffee shop with, you know what I'm talking about, the coffee shop on the corner across from the CVS. And there's I think.
Oh, yeah. What's there across from Marvin Gardens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, it's a little bit confusing because the note right below it says a majority of residents, 75%, are not in favor of any commercial development outside the village center. So to even show a picture of anything is almost a little like, what are you saying? You get seven out of 10 people are opposed, but you're going to think about it anyway?
So that picture's appropriate. That picture's appropriate.
Well, then you could put like a Ghostbusters circle with an X through it.
Well, that's why at the minimum I thought really tone it down to something that looks like almost like a rural post office. We're going to put a picture there. Because clearly we're saying this is not something that's going to be thought about very seriously, or if it does come our way, it's going to have to be awfully narrow.
That's true. Well, I mean, this whole discussion is to say that you'll consider it and then maybe consider not doing it. But you'll at least consider it. You know what I mean?
This section is actually just sort of summarizing the report, right?
It is. It is just pretty much, I took the survey and slapped it on this section in the format that's, you know, consistent with the rest of the documents.
It just needs a bigger picture.
Yeah, understood.
Cool, okay.
Can we talk about the conceptual drawings on 22? I know it's tentative.
Yeah.
I know someone, I don't know if a friend of yours or someone did that. It's a little confusing. Like, I know it took me a second, and I've seen your renderings, your, you know, vision map. It was very confusing. I had to acclimate myself. It took a couple minutes.
Oh yeah, John said the same thing. We're looking southwards with Newtown Road going across a Waxhaw Marvin Road going away from the picture.
People are going to think that roundabout, which currently doesn't exist, you know, is going to be the new, that might be, the point of reference for them might be that is Newtown, the roundabout at Newtown and Marvin.
Right.
So I think it's just a little confusing.
So I'll add in. I mean, this is a future revision of this rendering, but I'll add some text to it that, you know, explains where we are.
I would actually be very.
I think we're
I'm not sure I would include it.
Don't include it at all. Okay.
No, because I think this is based on a vision that was a talking point that, you know, it's your vision. It's not necessarily the planning board's vision. I think it's going to get a lot of people worked up. It's going to get a lot of people confused. You know, I think it's helpful if you're talking to someone one-on-one, but it's not helpful in a report.
Yeah, sure. I can just remove it and I'll leave what it said before, like a village center rendering will go here in the future. Just a text.
I mean, sure.
Why do we need to have one at all? Because we're not there yet. I mean,
Fair enough. I could just leave that space blank. I mean, I put something there because when I started working here, this is what I was given. There was a sketch there, and so I figured I'd update it, but if you don't want one there at all, then that's fine too.
I think if we haven't decided what we're even considering at this point. There's no point in leading people down a path that is just going to cause
Sure.
more next door craziness. So
Yeah, that's exactly
just
right.
Because you did it in the past doesn't mean you still have to do it. That is the worst kind of handcuffs ever. Just remove them.
When I look at that diagram, and it's nice, but it actually resembles most closely in my mind to the locations around here of the corner where the butcher shop is, Upper Road and Lotto Farms or something like that. That right there. You know what I'm talking? That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
We're going to equate that, and that's
Hawthorns.
Yeah. There's a bar there. There's the yoga place. That's what it looks like.
Fair enough. Anyway, this is just the section about the survey, so it's not even the section about the village center. It's just about the survey results. So it's definitely a fair thing to say. Just don't have a rendering or sketch or anything there.
Yeah.
I think the photo at the top is much more representative.
Sure, and it's obvious that that's just a picture. It's not our vision.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Anything else?
So has the council agreed to start looking at this before?
Yes, they talked.
Okay.
We brought it up at the last council meeting last week, and they said they would like to see the text after you guys, wrap it up and approve that you're going to send this text to them, and they're going to give it back to you by their June work session, which means we'll be seeing this again at the July planning board meeting with their comments.
Okay, that's great.
Good luck.
I think it'll be fine.
Just a short time.
That's 2 months almost. Their June work session is June 25th. Oh, that's 1
Okay.
month. Okay.
In light, with the exception of these comments we just made, is everybody okay with sending what we have here, with these corrections to them? I guess I'm going to say, I guess we need a vote, to send it for their first review.
Yeah, I would think we're ready, John. I think it's about time they get it. And it's going to take them quite a while to review it anyway.
Yeah.
I can make a motion.
That's my feeling. If we waited until we had all of, as far as we were concerned, all of the maps in it and all of the, everything else, they've got a lot of work to do before they even see maps and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I
time.
think this will get it moving. It's drugged too long. And I had that conversation with the council. I had that same conversation with Christina, and everybody's in support of that.
That's great.
Yeah, and also it's also maybe relaxing to know this is not the final version that you're saying. This is the final draft. So you'll still have another round of revisions after this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm going to make a motion to and send this final draft to the village council for their first and feedback.
A second.
Go ahead, John. You can second it. John, go ahead and second it.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? We'll take a vote. Paul?
Favor.
Kelly?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Was that a yes or no?
Aye, yes.
Oh, okay, all right. And I say yes. So unanimous.
Good job.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm
We
kidding.
just got that gorilla off our backs.
For now, for a couple
The
months.
second one's even bigger.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Then.
Moving on to the next step. Future land use map,
Okay.
Rohit.
So, as you'll see, and this is another thing, that I inherited, the future land use map does show that there are parcels outside of the village center that were shaded a different color. And after talking with people, I decided this is not my place to make any changes, assuming like maybe there was a mistake or whatever. So here we are. We've got to discuss each of these parcels that's in the memo, and there are some additional parcels that I also thought, if any one of these parcels were to be added to the district, then parcels such as the previous property and Vasi Reddy's property would be also good additions, as they were considered in the past, but not on this map. So today is kind of the day to have this big discussion on whether these properties should be considered or not, and to kind of get a better idea of what the final the district boundary should be. And so, as you guys are probably aware, there are several of the property owners in the chat today, as they we've been in touch, and they know that this was coming down the line for the past few months, and that this was the meeting. So I wanted to ask you in advance if it was okay with you, John.
Rohit,
Yeah.
anyone else? He sounds like he's going in and out.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah.
I think we all hear it.
All right, I'll talk slower then. We have terrible internet here, so we're working on that though. So several of the property owners that are going to be in consideration today are in the WebEx today, and I wanted to ask you in advance, John, if it was okay that if when discussing each of these properties individually, if the property owner of that property were allowed to speak as part of the discussion as well.
Before we get to that, Rohit, I think, and this bears on to the limits of the village center district. I'd ask you, some of you may remember when Laura was here, she was talking about the village center, or the zoning for that being an overlay district over top of the existing zoning versus changing the zoning of the affected properties to village center district. And in that regard, I know Rohit, and I'll use Scott Lett's property as an example because it's easy to talk about. It's 30 acres or whatever it is.
Yeah, 26.
And we're only talking about the village center being 300 feet deep or something. And you say, well, we've got to rezone all of his property. But if it's an overlay district, then we're not changing his zoning. It's just something. Did you look into that, and can you explain the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, we can explain the pros and cons of it. The idea is that an overlay district will add on top of the existing district some additional uses. And changing the zoning altogether would create a totally different framework of residential and commercial uses. So in this implementation, one of the big cons of an overlay district is that we were looking at this idea of transitional density of housing, but in an overlay district you'd still have the same residential R zoning that we have. So we wouldn't be allowed to impose that transitional density in the back, to have like a rural density in the back. They'd still be allowed to do anything that was allowed in the R zoning, and they could have the preserve type subdivision. And that was one of the things that Kelly said Meadowlark does not want to see right adjacent to them, is a more intense use. So an overlay district, while it could be used to add allowable uses, I would still recommend creating a new zoning district so that we can say, even in the district, that commercial can only be within 300 feet of the road, and then the rest of it has to be residential, and then we can further restrict the types of residential that are in the back. Is that fair? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Who said no?
Wait, did someone say no?
I said yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my recommendation after, looking into it, is that we should create a zoning district. It would allow us the flexibility of doing what we want with the residential part of the properties as well, and also would allow us to restrict the commercial to the front, just like an overlay district would.
So Rohit, quick question about completely rezoning. If you completely rezone, owners still have the choice to maintain the property as it currently is, or put commercial up to 300 feet off the road.
Yes, that can be part of our zoning district. Just like in the beginning when Marvin incorporated, we allowed the current uses to remain if they were not compliant, or they could, if they started to make changes, then they had to make them compliant with the new district, with the new R zoning.
Just a second. So, okay, so let's take we'll just Scott Lett's property. So if it gets rezoned to this new district and they choose not to do anything, explain that again. There was something that you said that just didn't
so what we allow even now is that once you rezone a property to something else, you can keep it the same exact way it is currently. It's only when you start making changes that you have to make them compliant with the new district.
Give me an example.
All right, yeah, sure. So, I mean, the only examples we have now are the examples of people who are in Marvin before it incorporated. And so on Waxhaw Marvin Road, there's an old neighborhood called Valhalla Farms, and they have some barns, and they're all the way to the back of their property. And that's not allowed. We need 60 feet if they're going to have horses. They're allowed to have those barns, and we won't go out and, do code enforcement on those barns. It's once they start making changes to those barns, and now they have to put them 60 feet from the back. If they were to do nothing, they could keep them there.
I got that, but it's just like a grandfather clause.
Yeah,
almost.
grandfathering.
But so if, let's take Scott Lett's property. If he were to, decided to put a housing development and not use the first 300 feet for commercial, would he be allowed to do that?
If it was village center zone, he'd be allowed to put housing development as per the residential regulations in the village center zoning, but not our residential zoning. Regardless, that's the reason why I'm proposing that is that's kind of what you wanted. You wanted to see only rural housing in the back of his property, and that's what we could prescribe in the village center zoning. If he were to not rezone and develop a residential subdivision.
Sorry. That's not what I meant. So let's say his property gets rezoned.
Mm-hmm.
He decides he doesn't want commercial. He wants to actually do an entire rural neighborhood, kind of like what Odell's, the Odell property got approved. Would he even be allowed to do that in that first 300 feet if he's been rezoned to this new commercial district?
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. If we don't allow it in the district, then he wouldn't be allowed to put residences in the front. Yeah, but we could also allow it. That's, I guess, what you're asking.
Yeah, I just don't want people to be restricted. Things change. Properties change hands. Mr. Lett is, has a son. I don't know Mr. Lett very well, if at all. What if Mr. Lett moved or passed away and his son had very different plans for his property than, let's say he wanted to do a rural neighborhood. I just want to make sure they have that right to go backwards instead of, you can go forward in terms of density and put commercial, but only in the first 300, but they also have the right to, keep the property as a rural property and do a rural density neighborhood.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I'm sorry. That's the reason I sort of brought up that overlay district, Kelly, with Rohit, because as I recall, 2 years ago, 3 years, however long it has been, since Laura's here, my understanding of an overlay district was, assume it still stays R zoning, didn't change it. And the property owner would have the right to say, I want to participate in this commercial construction, or I want to just keep it the way it is now in R zoning.
Yeah, and I get that, John. I think Rohit's point to me is that with that, you can't protect the rural properties around there with that like gradient, like the transitional zoning, like the houses, with just an overlay district.
Well, yeah.
They get a by right, though, right, Rohit? They would still have by right.
They have if you did an overlay district, they'd have by right for everything in our R zoning. So that means that what you're saying is you'd want them to have the right to build a rural subdivision, which is by right in R zoning. But then on the other hand, if you don't want them to be able to do a fully, suburban subdivision, then you'd have to change it to a village center district zoning. So it's kind of a balancing act that you guys have to, deliberate. Do you want them to be able to still do everything in the R zoning, including the things that you maybe wouldn't want to see next to you? Or would you want to exactly describe what they can and can't do in a new zoning?
So,
Yeah, I'm actually for the rezoning, but as long as they don't have to put commercial in the front if they choose not to.
Okay, that could be written into the zoning itself, Let me write that down. Yeah, it could be written into the zoning, and when we look at the actual zoning, which is going to be in a few months from now, we can make sure, it checks all the boxes of that. You can say, hey, remember a few months ago you said, are they going to be allowed to still do a residential subdivision? And we can add that you can either build commercial or residential in the front, and then you can only build residential in the back.
Yeah, I like that. Because it's, with properties changing hands, you don't want to dictate what someone can and can't do with their own property.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any thoughts on overlay district versus rezoning?
Yeah, Kelly, I think where you're going is a good idea. And Rohit, I think maybe it's appropriate and probably going to be very helpful to the rest of the residents to help them understand that it's not all or none. These lots are not all or none. That they're going to be different uses on individual lots. And in fact, that's going to be completely intentional because of the need for a gradient between uses or extreme uses. And so I don't know, I'm pretty sure in the conversations I've had with my neighbors that there's a presumption that it's all or none. A whole lot will look a certain way, and that's it. So I think whether and if you want to use technical terms like it's an overlay or some sort of zoning overlays and whatnot, I think it's still important to break it down in layman's terms for folks to understand that along you're talking about 300 feet depth in parcels that are much larger than that.
Exactly.
Well, yeah,
Exactly.
And part of that, it's several steps on down the road in this whole process is they will, we'll be mandated to we'll have to have the public involvement meetings with the public regarding this entire program, village center district and the rezoning and the maps and all that stuff. We'll have to have, and that's, hopefully we'll get some residents out to learn.
And I have some ideas, Rohit, on how to visually map what you and I just talked about so that residents understand what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. What's your
Just
idea?
get an easy visual, so we can talk about that when we get to that
Oh,
point.
sure.
But I think very clear visuals really help, and I think, not to bring it up again, but I think that's why your map got plagiarized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I asked Barbie to send you guys in like the revised version. In addition to some of the text being revised, I wanted to send you guys a map so that you don't have to look at the parcel as a whole and think, oh, the commercial is going to be in this whole 26 acres. But you can look at within the mixed use parcel that one of just the front is commercial, and you'll see it'll be a lot clearer. We're talking 80+% of the parcels are still going to be residential. Vast majority of the parcel is still residential. Only the front of it would be commercial, and then seeing that distribution on a map as opposed to just a parcel may make the public, not only more informed but also, a little more at ease.
Yeah, and Rohit, are you referring to the documents that were emailed or dated May 18th, and X2 is the VC district?
Yes. That document, again, a conceptual document, would show within the mixed-use parcels that how we're at this point planning to distribute the commercial and residential.
And just to level set, so I understand, the colors have no meaning. These are obsolete. Is that what I thought I heard?
No. The colors on that map, and as long as you're looking at the map with like the subzones, the purple, and I can pull up. I'll pull up a version. I'm gonna screen share you guys right now. The purple would be commercial, and the yellow is suburban, and the green is rural. Let's see here. And I've made a more interactive version of this, so that's what I'm sharing right now. It's a little bit different than the one you have, but the idea is the same. So for people to see that this green area means we'll have rural housing, and this yellow area means we would have suburban housing, and the front is commercial, and the blue is like light commercial. In case we were going to consider the parcels outside of the roundabouts, they could be even further limited to a much higher percentage of offices, for example, so that there's far less traffic outside of the roundabouts. And that's the discussion we're about to have. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And so if you just kind of internalize that the blue and yellow is residential, you'll actually realize how little of these properties are going to be having commercial use. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. That's helpful.
Didn't you take off the house on the corner next to the Reasons?
I did. Well, I haven't taken anything out yet because as per the future land use map, all these parcels are still highlighted, and I wanted to have a per parcel discussion with you guys before making any changes on my own.
Okay. Would you mind sharing your screen?
It's not shared?
No. Sorry. Let me finish. Would you mind continue to share your screen? Can you do a split screen and show the write-ups?
Yes.
Yes. You can refer to the write-ups as we look at this.
Hopefully. Let me see.
It's hard to there's no way to keep the WebEx up and look at your documents without making them small.
Yeah. I've got to get rid of this, and I've got to get rid of that, and hopefully that does it. And then I can scroll to wherever you want to look at.
Cool. And it was really just the write-up that you did about each of the properties.
Yeah.
It's just the visual and the writing is helpful.
Yeah, so I mean, this is the conversation that we're about to have. So yeah, it's a good idea to have them both up. And I figured it would be easiest to just start left to right. What do you guys think? So we can knock them all out.
Keep it in the order that you have it written up, Burrowhead.
Oh, yeah, that's fine too. Okay, the order I have it written up is not really any order. It was just the same order that's top to bottom in the page before it. And the only reason for that order is because it was easiest to draw the arrows. So that means the first property to be discussed is Ravi Vasireddy's property, which is gonna be the north of our village center, village hall property. And if everyone's still seeing my screen, then you can see that I've zoomed into his property, which is here on Marvin School Road, just north of our, just north of the village hall. And so, so the conversation I've had with Ravi is that his property was considered in the past. It was part of the village center, and it was removed by staff, which is not an appropriate procedure. But there are many benefits to having this property, mostly because this is the only property that's going to be really like adjacent to our village hall. And if you've been to any other town, you realize that there are very many synergistic uses that can be next to a village hall. And also the one thing that really came to my attention when he said was that our driveway currently for the village hall site is too close to the roundabout. NCDOT gave our driveway access permit reluctantly. And so if the need was there to have to put the driveway further up Marvin School Road, he would be the person that we'd need to coordinate with, and it would be a lot easier to coordinate if there was some sort of, if there was like a cohesiveness in the zoning. So for those two reasons, and this is from him, he'd always wanted that this property, have some sort of synergistic use for being next to the village hall, and so for that reason, I'm here recommending that that you include this property in the village center district.
Light commercial use would be office buildings, like what?
Light commercial. Yeah, this is not something that we've, gone into the details about yet, but light commercial could be, anything, any number of ways, such as, restricting the types of uses, to limiting those that draw more traffic. You can also prescribe lower density, lower floor area ratio, that is. And there's even more ways, just lowering the raw volume of commercial even. But there are definitely ways to prescribe in the zoning district that we have envelopes where there's a central envelope and then there's a fringe envelope. And in those fringe envelopes, you could put that there are, less intense uses.
The only thing I'll say about this property is it's all by itself, and it just wouldn't seem fair to leave it out because it's
a relatively small parcel. Everything around it, with the exception of the Marvin Village Hall parcel, is already developed, and so it would not lend itself to be tied in to the other, was that the enclave or whatever it is?
Yeah, the preserve. I don't know why Google says enclave, it's the preserve.
Yeah, the preserve. It wouldn't lend, it doesn't fit in with them. So it's just an island unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
What would the green property be useful for if this was included in the VCD?
This is one property. This is a subzone map. So the green and the blue are the same property, but the green shows how there would be a buffer, and the blue is only where they'd be allowed to develop.
Okay, so in essence, the green would have to stay truly green space.
Right.
Is that sort of true?
Yeah, green, or maybe the trail can go there, or the detention ponds, but the main, you know, construction of buildings and such would still have to be at least, this is like 50 to 100 feet from the edges of the subdivision, you know, the boundary that there's in the back. So I can turn off this layer to show you how that's just one property. You see that?
Yeah, no, I understood that. What I was sort of trying to understand is this particular property, it's not like there'd be room to put houses behind it.
Probably not.
All
And
commercial.
there may only be enough room to put a buffer, but a buffer is enough to protect a 50 to 100 foot buffer is enough to protect the preserve from being adjacent to commercial uses.
This whole property is what, 3 acres, Rohit?
Yeah, something like that, 3 to 4 acres.
Yeah, I'd keep it in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the only one it's pretty cut and dry that doesn't fit any place else.
Great. Okay.
Does
So
anybody have any reasons why they wouldn't want it included? All right, moving on.
okay, great. The next one on the list is Reasons' property, which is now we're starting to go on the left side here. It's been considered also for its size and its location, but I finally did get in touch with Jeff Reasons, and he has said, you know, it's always been intriguing to him, you know, the idea of being in the village center, especially the house in the front, which he no longer owns. He sold that to the Windles, but he said that he's kind of tired. He said he wants to, you know, sell his property and travel the world, and if you can get this village center thing happening in a few months, then yeah, maybe you can, you know, I'll be in. And I said, no, it's probably going to take a year. And then he said, well, then I don't care what you decide. And so it's also been, you know, thought that this is kind of on the outside, and I guess this is kind of hand in hand with Mrs. Windle's opinion that she does not really want to move. She just bought the house about a year ago and is very happy with the location. So my recommendation is to remove this from the consideration.
I agree.
Yeah, as I said last month, I think that it's pretty easy to say roundabout to roundabout, and then when we start stretching beyond that, where do you stop?
Right. I mean, the answer to that question, as I said last time, is there is a pretty clear boundary of what is undeveloped and is proper for the village center and what is not. We're going to talk about Priebus's property in a little bit, but you know, once you get to the already built houses on small properties, that's not really convertible to the village center district. But then you have these large tract properties that are kind of a blank slate. It's a really good opportunity for us to prescribe what we think and what combination of what we think and the property owner thinks. But again, for the sake of Reasons' property, I think if he's fine with not being in the village center, then it's probably better to not consider it.
Plus, it's so gorgeous.
Right.
Can
Agreed.
we all go in? 4.4 mil. It's just.
Okay, so do we have a consensus to remove Reasons from consideration?
Yes,
Yes.
for me.
I'm a yes too. That's 17 acres, so that's.
Okay.
I could afford 100 square feet.
And the same would go for the Windle then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so drag Windle, remove. So we don't need to discuss Windle any further. Are we just gonna have a consensus to remove Windles from consideration?
Yeah, you with the reason, so I think it was you covered it there too.
Sure.
Can I guess though, to me, it might be relevant what you plan on doing on the other side of the street.
Yeah. In the past, I had introduced Schmidt's property, but I was the one that initiated that, so I've just removed it because I initiated that last time as an idea to negotiate the trail. But if Reason's property is not going to be considered, then it makes no sense. Golden Bell has already been developed into preserve. Schmidt's property is on the opposite, like on the far side of it. So really, I think we will need to consider some other way to get the property to allow us to build this Marvin Loop Trail without having it be commercial. It's currently houses.
I probably should have been clearer. I meant on the other side of Newtown.
Oh yeah, on the other side of Newtown. All right. That's next.
Just I think it's relevant what you plan on doing on the south side of Newtown to judge what you might be willing to do on the north side. So I'm just sort of reserving my thoughts until I hear a little bit more about the south side of Newtown.
Sure, that's next on the list. I've kind of grouped Priebus, Odell, and Lett Jr.'s property. This is Scott Lett's property. He owns that 1 acre triangle here. Again, you've heard from one of the Priebus's who is in the chat, I think, still. Let me check. But they've
Yes, I am still here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so you'll if the chairman would like to extend the opportunity for her to speak in this discussion, then you can speak. Is that fine with you, John?
Can I actually interrupt? May I interrupt? I'm sorry. I'd love to hear from her. But what makes the difference is the Philbrook property, the Lett Jr. property, and then the brand new house in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to talk about those first before we can even talk about Priebus and Odell.
Sure.
Those could set the tone for the rest of those properties.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think TJ Philbrick is on the chat right now. Is that true? In which case, we can talk to him, but yeah, sure, we can start with that. In fact, I had Wendell and Coates both together, so that might be a good opportunity. In the beginning, TJ had come to me several times with a strong desire to simply use his existing house as an engineering office. And that, I think, it would have a near zero traffic impact. But that also kind of set the tone for, extending that opportunity for these properties too, to have uses with near zero traffic impacts, so that they'd hardly be, a bother to the rest of the area, the immediate area, that is. He's also since I've submitted that earlier vision plan, he's also told me that he'd be fine with putting a driveway on Newtown Road at the far end of his property. So the idea that that would tie into Meadowlark Lane, that could be removed, and that he would only have a driveway on Newtown Road. So there's no access at all for any of these properties onto Meadowlark Lane.
And obviously that's a concern for my neighborhood, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually personally more concerned about the property in the middle. They just
Mm-hmm.
built that house.
Right.
And if I'm not what are their thoughts? Because if they're not interested in moving, they have a baby. I've seen a baby or a little person. You can't have commercial on either side. It's one lone house, just like, Robbie's property's like all by itself. This property would be all by itself. So
Yeah.
talk to them.
I haven't talked to them specifically, but I've talked to the Wendells, who are, really, I think they're mother and daughter. And they said, Lisa Wendell said that she'd be fine with those light commercial uses across the street. She said, as long as nothing big like a CVS is going up, then she can manage that. And in this case, if we were only going to look at Philbrick's house, he's claimed that he might have even less traffic than what he has now because of all the Amazon deliveries he's getting. And so we're not talking about, restaurants with, boilers and smells and all that. We're talking about something that would be indistinguishable from a residential use.
Well, the problem there is that may be his intent today, but how long is he personally going to be there? He retires or whatever, gets out of the engineering business, And, you know, then we have some other, you know, well, it's already commercial, so
Mhm.
something more intense can move in.
I mean, plus, but you can't have commercial right next to a residence.
And I know it, that's what I'm saying.
You're right, so I'm making that point to Rohit, like.
Yeah.
So this is why I don't understand, like, why this property is even in consideration, because of this middle home, or this middle property.
Right.
And you've got potentially rural right behind it.
Well, the recommendation is to remove it, is it not, Rohit?
Well, yes, to remove the Coates house from consideration is that recommendation. But I mean, I would still consider, I mean, commercial, to use the word commercial is kind of, disingenuous to, when comparing like an engineering office use, which again, we can prescribe that if TJ's house were to be in the village center, then only those kinds of uses would be allowed, like uses that you couldn't tell if it was a house, if it looked like a house and didn't have too much back and forth traffic, you couldn't even tell that it was not a house.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with this, just because I don't know the Coateses, but I wouldn't want to build $1 million home or however much it costs them and then have someone's house converted to a commercial use, no matter what kind of commercial use. You've got workmen, all kinds of people coming. You don't know these people. Like, at least with a neighbor, a residential neighbor, you've got a little bit more knowledge of what's going on. And then the Let Junior's property, if that's commercial as well, this poor house will be surrounded by commercial. And I just don't think that's right to do that to them.
Well, they do it up in East Boulevard, in Charlotte. You'll have accountants.
Sorry, what county are you in?
It happens.
I know it happens, but it's not right. It's just not right. Not when you build in Marvin and you invest that kind of money into a home. You don't move there with the intention that someone's going to have a commercial property next to you.
I mean, office. I was thinking more office.
But it's still a commercial property.
Yeah.
And it's like, when we were talking about transitions, and someone made the point, the little brick house that abuts to I guess it'd be the church property, and then the movement mortgage property, the pond, 3-acre pond. You can't just make a rule just for that house. Like, it's all or nothing. The rules have to apply to everybody. I'm sorry, I feel really strongly about this for the Coates, and if you can convince me otherwise, I would also want to hear from them.
Wouldn't the Let property be, if the Let property was commercial, it'd be right next door to them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they'd be between.
There is no, not technically, because there's Meadowlark and then the Odell property.
I think they're confusing. The little triangle next to the Coates is also a Let property.
Yeah, this 1 acre triangle here.
Yeah.
Owned by Let.
While the owner might be the same, it's not the same property, so the properties could be treated differently.
Yes, of course.
Right. So to me, it's two separate things.
Yeah.
So just because you give Let Senior, he's in, does not mean that small property is in as well.
Yes, of course. So, Coates is not, I don't think Coates is on the call today. Would you want to put this off until we talk to him about it?
Well, I still feel strongly that we just stop at the roundabout, future roundabout, at Meadowlark and at Marvin Road. That's where the village center stops. And we don't go beyond that. in any way, shape, or form.
So you're saying roundabout to roundabout?
Yeah,
Except for
except for the
Robbie's property is
Robbie's property,
kind of on the roundabout. So.
which is an island that if we don't include it, it becomes nothing.
Well, I guess to not make exceptions, your vision is nothing west of Marvin Road and nothing east of Marvin School Road, basically, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
So that Vasi Reddy's property is still within the roundabout, and
Yeah.
all of Fincher's property is still within the roundabout.
yeah.
Could you see something though west, let's say, of Marvin Road that wouldn't be the traditional one home, 1 acre? In other words, could there be some sort of transitional leading into the commercial district?
Yes, it's possible to allow, say, Russ's property and Priebus's property to be in the village center, but then the fringe zoning district would only allow them to build residential and maybe a little bit more than one lot per acre. It's possible, yes.
We would have to come up with a new, an additional new district.
Well, not a district, but like a zoning envelope. For example, you've all got experience in Marvin Gardens and how there are 4 out parcels, and each of those out parcels basically is its own sub-zoning district. Like out parcel 1 is the only one with a gas station, and that gas station has to be this, this, and this. You know what I mean? So in that sense, you can have the central area be one envelope, like the Publix, and then these fringe areas be another envelope in which you dictate a certain transitional density of residential. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, but so in terms of the density transitions, if it is an envelope, like a residential envelope, like you were saying, that would still protect the residential, like the rural homes that abut those properties.
Yes, yes. In that envelope, you could prescribe the same way. Let me turn on the subzones map again. You could say still that the green area in the back here would be only residential, rural residential, that too. And then this yellow area in the middle could be a suburban subzone. And then you could say in the front, this blue area, I've called it light commercial, but you could even then just call it maybe urban residential, but not, I mean, just for lack of name right now, but only allow it to have, a little bit more dense than 1 lot per acre density, but not commercial.
Yeah, and I'm only asking, what I have in my mind is sort of the transition between Marvin Creek and Amber Meadows as you come out to Ray Road.
Right, and so we're probably not looking at townhomes here, but just something a little more than 1 lot per acre, right?
Yeah, and then perhaps you get the things that we've been talking about, like a park or, whatever, right? Things that Mark has been talking about.
Right.
Like senior type residences or retirement, whatever they're.
I'm just floating it out as a concept, and whether or not anybody's interested. Again, I'm just sort of wondering, does it make sense to have 1 acre homes right next to an ice cream shop? And
Yeah.
Maybe the answer is no. Maybe it's best to have the transition housing between the 1 acre home and the ice cream shop. I'm just thinking.
That's something I've thought as well, just from a planning theory perspective, that when you have a mixed use or just a commercial district like this, you kind of want to have more houses than less in a walkable kind of buffer from it. And so if we have the opportunity to allow some of these fringe properties to have a little more dense housing, then maybe we don't need to prescribe them commercial, but still allow the property owner to make, a good amount of, potential for their property.
Well,
What
but I
about-
also add that, again, we don't want to necessarily go in the townhome direction, but if you could perhaps allow a little more density in some of the housing, but get more open space as a result, then maybe it works.
Yeah, that could definitely work. And we would have a public park, area as a kind of trade-off for having a little more density locally.
Sort of goes back to that conservation
Yeah.
district that we threw out.
Yeah, that maybe that conservation.
Not like.
Yeah, conservation district may not be appropriate for all of Marvin, but for some of these properties, I could definitely see that working.
Rohit, what about the people across the street from the Priebus's property? Those are
These people.
rural as well. Yes. And I don't think they're probably not a HOA either. They're just individual lots.
Yeah, I haven't been able to speak to these people. I haven't reached out to these people.
I think we need to consider their best interests as well. So while I agree that this might, the Priebus property might be a good conservation, potentially a good conservation property. If you've got more dense housing along Newtown, you've got also these more horse folks across the street. So, I mean, it makes sense, but it's not balanced. It's not balanced on both sides of the road.
It goes back to what I said last time, where you draw the line.
And I'm saying I think it is fair to draw the line with this property because it's like one property, or two properties. It's an opportunity for us to prescribe, something that we want and think that could work with the rest of the district. Whereas all these little properties, they're already, one houses. They've already got people living in them who might not want to change what they're doing. And so the line really is drawn here. There's no reason to go any further than this.
Well, and that's my point though, is that you've got you're proposing very different densities on either side of Newtown. And I'm not saying that I think that the other side should be commercial. I mean, it's rural, it should stay rural. So how do you justify a more dense property right across the street? And that is a dangerous curve. And people are constantly accelerating up that hill. I don't know, this is a tough one as well. We have to look out also for those houses that are already established and have been there for a long time.
I understand that, but I want to ask you, what is the issue with having denser housing across the street?
Well, I mean, are you basically saying that with our discussion on transitional density, does this not apply because there's a road in between it?
I mean, it could, but the thing is, Newtown Road sees 10, 20,000 cars a day, and those horses are probably used to it, It's very different than being physically adjacent as Meadowlark is.
I'm sure this is a dumb question, but is it possible we could do something with Newtown Road if we're talking about changing this area?
It is possible, and I've talked with NCDOT about this. They, in a big project like this, they are more willing to work with the municipality. Of course, we'd have to look into how we fund it, but I think the municipal service district would help with that. But yes, the answer is yes. We can do things about Newtown Road.
I'm just picturing there'd be a way to straighten that bad turn, that bad corner, and then somehow use this transitional housing around that to address what Kelly's talking about.
Straighten the curve, huh?
Yeah,
Flatten it.
up that hill,
Flatten the curve. Sorry. I
Yeah.
was just sure. Well, it's also so that it's not just a curve; it's also a hill.
Yeah, that's the other issue. Newtown Road was built on a ridge, and so the reason why it's built like this is it's geometrically like cheapest and easiest. So as soon as you go off of Newtown Road, it drops off quite a bit, and it might be very expensive to realign that road. I mean, it's definitely something that can be considered.
I mean, the other consideration is if
It
you
would take
get
a lot of
closer.
realignment though, not just a demo.
But you've also like where does their entrance and exit go when you've got a dangerous uphill curve where people are accelerating? I mean, and maybe that's an opportunity to slow everything down and putting some sort of entrance there.
Yeah, that's something I thought too. Let's say if this was only a subdivision, there could be an entrance. There could be an entrance here, and there could be an entrance maybe somewhere in this region. And having intersections there actually will go a long way to slowing people down because they have to be more aware of people that may be coming out of those streets.
Would you attest to that, Kelly, coming out of Metal Arc?
Every day I take my life into my own hands trying to leave Metal Arc. But yeah, I mean, and it's that curve. Everyone's accelerating up that curve, so they come around to the what hopefully will eventually be our new roundabout. But they come around at like 45, 50 miles an hour, and it's a 35 mile an hour zone. No one goes 35 miles an hour. It's like, except me when I try and slow down and make people go the speed limit. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a possibility, Rohit.
Yeah, we can definitely talk with NCDOT to see what they can do about that curve.
It's another like visual traffic calming, visually traffic calming. And that's kind of how, I'm not for development. I'm not for density at all. That's why I live in a rural neighborhood, but traffic calming almost trumps density in some of these cases, especially for the danger factor. So traffic calming measures are one of our number one concerns as a community and one of our number one goals as a planning board. I would be more willing to include this property if we could make an example out of their entrance and exits. I mean, I don't know how it would be developed, but like.
I think the only thing that would maybe, if we were doing that, I don't think an intersection is going to do it, but let's throw another roundabout in there.
And I've also brought this idea up in the last meeting, just in the sketches. I think that either if one of these two intersections here was a roundabout, and again, this could be funded through the municipal service district, then a lot of your concerns would be relieved because people would then know they need to slow down, and then you'd have signs saying there's a roundabout around this curve. They would all need to slow down to approach this roundabout.
And so instead of having a four spoke roundabout,
It would just be 3.
Right, it would just be 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good opportunity and a good trade-off for how to proceed with development of those lots, is because it's, to Kelly's point, not figuratively or metaphorically the number one thing. It's literally the number one thing for the survey. It's traffic. Both inside and outside. It is overwhelming in the 80s. So I think that anything that can mitigate, and I agree with Kelly, we all live here, we know what it's like from there in that curve, going either way. I think having a roundabout there would be, any kind of chicane or roundabout would be an amenity to slowing things down along that stretch. Nobody goes 35 there.
And maybe the developer could chip in for the cost.
Right. That's a possibility. Again, I'm really hoping that the municipal service district will raise a lot of the funds needed for the infrastructure overall. And for the people on the call, municipal service district is a special taxing district. that would only apply to these properties, and then we can leverage the future taxes to fund the infrastructure now. And so the roundabout is one of those things that could be, partially at least funded by that strategy.
I like that. I mean, I like this idea. I still am not okay with surrounding the Coates property with commercial,
Yeah.
even light commercial. I don't think it's fair to them.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that may make it, is this conservation district or whatever we call that area that is a combination of denser residential plus green space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we need to be mindful of the fact that number 2 was greenways. Oh yeah, sidewalk, walkability, green space. Well, 80% of law.
Yeah, I'll just go off of what Chris said, is that the more houses, that are closer to this district, all those houses will have a walkable, commercial area, and that's really where the planning paradigm is going, from now to the future. Walkability to destinations. It's a good opportunity. So then, can I recommend now? I think we all see where this conversation is going. For the Priebus, Odell, and Lett Jr. I think we should maybe go back to TJ, but in a second. But for Priebus, Odell, and Lett Jr. to include them in the district contingent on that one of the entrances is a roundabout and that it is only residential but can be denser than 1 lot per acre in a small portion of it.
Well, is that the way the best way to organize it is to make it physically part of the village center, but it's not commercial, it's residential? I mean,
yeah. So the way I'm proposing it is, let's say we have to have one boundary, that is, but the boundary, I don't think I'm using the right zone. The boundary can include that this central area will have commercial uses, and then this fringe area will not have commercial uses, but will be allowed to develop housing that is slightly denser than 1 lot per acre. And it's still in the same zoning district, just like Marvin Gardens.
Would it have to be in order to take advantage of tax increment, a special taxing?
I'm trying to keep these things not dependent on each other, but as John and I saw at the Main Street conference, the special taxing district is pretty much like a step 0 for a project like this.
Understood. So it is independent and necessary if we want.
Yes, the municipal service district is, in essence, independent in that if we don't establish it somehow and we still go forward with the village center, then without that funding, we'll need to pretty much put most of the burden on the developer, although CartPo is willing to fund a good part of the pedestrian infrastructure, and then maybe we can get some grants as well. But yes, it's not dependent on the municipal service district.
Okay.
I mean, for it to go ahead, there's going to have to be some governmental expenditures, I think, for street improvement, down the middle and landscaping and
Right. And again, that can be looked into as part of the CIP. And also, again, CartPo is willing to help with the roadway improvements. They've got a bunch of money. So yes, it's going to require a combination of public and private investment. Public being, you know, as you said, the streetscape pretty much, and maybe a little bit of the utilities.
You know, that's, you know, in comparison to Marvin Creek, you know, that was easy enough to say that was all the developer's responsibility there. Because basically Marvin didn't have to do anything along Joe Carr Road.
Right, and this is a little different because, like Marvin Gardens, we don't have to have a municipal service district for them because Publix is funding everything. They're funding the sidewalks, they're funding the traffic light, you know, they're even building us a park. They're funding everything. So we didn't need to find funding mechanisms like the municipal service district. But in this case, you see we have several individual property owners, pretty much all of whom would really, you know, have to find some source of funding, but to make some of these things happen. You know, people like Scott White are probably just going to sit on their house until a developer buys it, unless we have a municipal service district.
Yeah, and that's the only way that we can have some uniformity in, you know, a historic looking village center.
Right.
Rohit, two things.
Mhm.
One, would Marvin or Union County be responsible for running, I know that they were gonna be running sewer and water across the roundabout. So would we also be responsible for running it down Newtown for the previous property? And two, can you just go over really quickly why it has to, you said something about an envelope, like about a fringe. I guess you were already always considering that part of this BCD.
Yes, I mean, the only way that this would work is to have envelopes because it would be completely, you know, inconsiderable to have the whole. If we were to add more parcels, the whole district have the same characteristics. So, for example, I've got my screen over in Marvin Gardens, and we have these out parcels in this corner area, and they have specific, separate regulations than the rest of the property. And so this out parcel area allows a little bit more than what is allowed in the main area. They allow drive-throughs, there's allowed one gas station, etc. And so that gas station is not allowed back here or back here, is only allowed in this area. And that's what you can do with a zoning envelope. We're kind of doing the reverse with the zoning envelope. We're allowing less than the main use, but the purpose is the same, to make it so that an area of a zoning district can only have less uses than the main district for any specific reason. In this case, because it's outside of the roundabouts, the traffic flow would not tend for commercial uses and its proximity to other residences.
So what is the benefit of including this? Because they could basically do a conservation style development with currently what we have on the books. So like why do they have to be in the BCD?
Well, I guess this is some sort of, you know, midway conversation because the previouses are telling me, you know, they wanted to see commercial development and they think that would be the most use of their property, and we're saying in the planning board here that you don't want to see commercial development, but I'm saying, and Paul is saying too, that, you know, having a little more density than one lot per acre would be suitable for a property being next to a district like this, and so that may be an effective, you know, a midway location. You know, if you don't have commercial out here, maybe allowing them to have greater than one lot per acre, which is not something that conservation subdivision allows, would be a good way to allow them, you know, to make the most of their property while also making the most of being next to the village center. And it's a little bit above what is allowed currently.
But don't we have, like, that is what conservation is. You can have tighter density in certain areas.
Right, but the overall,
So,
well, the
I'm
thing
just
is,
trying to understand.
right, even though the lot sizes are smaller than 1 acre, you still have an overall density of 1 lot per acre. And in fact, it comes down to kind of, not even 1 lot per acre. It comes down to even less than that, kind of like 0.8 lots per acre. Like if you look at Barcroft, for example, they were a conservation subdivision, but what ended up happening, let's see if I can scroll to it real quick, was only 27 lots on 41 acres, even though it was a conservation subdivision. Do you see this? This is Barcroft here. And even though it's clustered with the natural preservation around the edges, they still only got 27 lots on 41 acres. And that's kind of the way that the conservation is written. It's allowing you to have each individual lot be less than 1 acre, as long as the overall density is still 1 lot per acre, and even less than that, actually.
Right, so if the previous property is what, 30 some acres?
21 acres.
21 acres. So if it's 21 acres, you could technically have 21 lots, correct? 21 homes.
You could technically have 21, but realistically, with the road and the stormwater detention, it really comes down to like 80%. So and they have got some wetland in the back too. They'd probably end up with 15, 16 lots at most. And what Paul is presenting here, and I'm also saying, is that you could allow them to have an overall density that is greater than 1 lot per acre, and allow them to maybe have 30 units on their 21 acres. For example, this townhome here, this townhome neighborhood in the top of Marvin, which is not in Marvin, but you see they've built 30-ish homes on 21 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the 17 acres is unbuildable, obviously. That's why they didn't build on it. But now we're looking into seeing if they'll donate that to us and make it kind of like a boardwalk park, trail park kind of thing. And that's kind of the benefit of allowing 30. Obviously they're not going to be nearly this close to each other, but like a 30 lots on 20 acres, and then the rest of it being like a really big park.
Yeah, no, I got it. So you're saying that can't happen in a conservation neighborhood setting?
Yeah, no, this couldn't happen. You still could not have.
But no one will stand for townhouses. So
No. This is an exaggeration of what we're talking about.
Right.
Just to make that clear.
Right. So this is what I'm getting at. What could be possible in the previous property cannot physically be done under a conservation umbrella.
If what we're saying is to allow more than 1 lot per acre overall, then no, it's not currently allowed anywhere in Marvin. But to allow that in the properties next to the village center, and while still prescribing that the back needs to be lower density, it is a good consideration to allow. It's a good way to consider them into the district.
Okay, that you answered my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me point out, it's 8:50 now.
Uh-huh.
How far do we want to go this evening? I'm not trying to cut conversations off. I just don't want someone to get surprised.
Can we go 9:30?
That's fine, but
That's generally our take, is
I'm just trying to focus people there.
yeah, we generally go 3 hours.
And how long, your item 5, Rohit?
That's very informational. It should take 5 minutes.
Okay, that's all we need, just to understand that. Like I said, I'm just trying to keep us focused.
Okay.
I know that I went off, John, but that was actually really important to understand in order to have the discussion make the rest of the discussion much easier.
Well, I'm not, no, I understand, and I think it's, this is the conversations we have to have before we can focus on actually finishing, the maps or stuff.
Yeah, it's actually a good conversation to have hand in hand with the zoning district as well to, flush out the vision of what you want to see.
Yeah. And quite honestly, it's going in a different direction than I would have expected.
But it's a good direction. I mean, we have obviously we have the property owners on the call who would like to see more of their property than the current R zoning allows, and it does make sense to consider at least something because of their blank slate kind of properties and being right next to the village center. So this is a very good discussion. I like the way it's going.
Let's take this conversation and say, would that be applicable to the far end of the Fincher property?
Yes, actually, that is one of the things I was going to bring up when we got to that point. In the subzone map I have here, you could say, the Fincher property is 2 properties, and you could say the front property is where the commercial goes, and the back property is where denser residential goes. But no commercial.
Can you go to the colored map again? Because
All right, so
because it's more than you got to provide more than just a buffer in
Right.
terms of separating rural and commercial.
yeah, this one case is going to be something that we have to discuss later. It's not part of the discussion today. But I mean, 100-foot fully mature tree buffer is like a wall. Like, you're never going to know what's on the other side of that 100-foot buffer of trees. But regardless, this is enough room to put a row of houses, and you could put that row, spaced apart such that it's kind of more rural, and then have fully grown trees in between. That's the
Okay.
intent.
All right, that's helpful. It's hard to conceptualize when you're looking at a, map.
So anyway, so I've split this up specifically because I thought you were going to bring that up, and then this could be your denser residential. I mean, that's a conversation for a little bit later, but I mean, that's a possibility.
If we're going to go that direction on one end, then it would be natural to, that you got that same buffer or transitional area,
Mm-hmm.
identical transitions on each end of the district.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of like,
If we go there, I'm not
Right.
I'm not necessarily on board with that idea yet, but at least.
right. So for the discussion for now, and so we don't belabor the point, could end at, saying that they can be considered if they're considered as only residential. And just leave it at that, and then discuss the details at a future meeting.
Sort of suggesting is take a look at Amber Meadows, from Ray Road to Amber Meadows to Marvin Creek, and see what I'm talking about in terms of sort of transition. Initially I was certainly opposed to that kind of thing myself, but now I've seen it in place and it works. It looks good. It fits Marvin. If we're going to do a village center district with commercial, again, I'm struggling to see the house on the 1 acre lot next to the ice cream shop. I think
Yeah.
it makes sense to have something in between them, that's all.
Yeah, and this is a really good example, in fact. So we have commercial at this intersection. We have a CVS, the swim club, all that. And then we have Amber Meadows, then we have Tullamore, and then we have Marvin Creek. And it works for everyone because Amber Meadows, it's an age-restricted neighborhood. They have a CVS across the street that they could walk to. It's a whole neighborhood full of people that, that may, in the future may not be able to drive very shortly, and they can walk to a CVS, which is this far. This is really this close.
But we're not talking about putting a CVS in
Right.
the village center.
No, we're not talking about that. All I'm saying is that having denser housing next to commercial is a really, really good planning principle. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, Amber Meadows and Tullamore, are they both 55 and over?
No. Only Amber Meadows is. They're connected, but only Amber Meadows is 55 and up in the patio home types. And you can see in the Google Maps here, you see how close the Amber Meadows houses are, and some of these houses are actually built now in between. And then these are Tullamore houses, so you can see in action in Marvin this idea of transitional density.
It's a great example.
And it works. I haven't heard a single complaint.
Well, I think it ought to be added to the consideration. In other words, if you're going to have a VC district, you probably need some form of transition. And I think as people think of the VC district, they ought to think of that as hand in glove. They kind of come together. And if you don't want the transition, then maybe you don't want the VC district. Maybe you got to think along those lines.
Right, I agree with that. I mean, the resident survey obviously says, a majority of people want the district, and it's up to us here to figure out what that looks like in a way that may make the 35% of people that don't want it at least like okay with it. And, having a majority of the fringe be housing and then only the frontage be commercial, that's something that people could buy into.
So back to, I know the names, Amber Meadows and Tullamore. So the Tullamore, that's the larger.
Yeah, that's a conservation subdivision type as well.
But those are not Marvin Creek houses. They're smaller houses. On
Yeah,
smaller
they're a bit smaller than Marvin Creek, yes. But they're not like super small by any means.
That's a big community, and those homes are very separated.
Yeah. There's still all of this area. I think they built 40 something homes on 90 acres. So it's still pretty unbuilt, and that's only because, again, the back was not buildable because of wetlands. But it's still the idea that each individual home has got less than 1 acre as an individual, but overall it's far less than 1 lot per acre. It's only 40 something on 90 acres.
Can you click on satellite view on the map you have open?
Yes, I can. 1 second.
I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. I have to change it here. Let's see.
It's a pretty traditional neighborhood. They're large yards, large homes. They're a little closer to Irvingwood from the Marvin Creek. But
yeah, but it's the Rocky Hollow Drive that is Amber Meadows that transitions right into Tullamore.
Right, and nobody has a problem with that.
You sort of don't even notice it, but then all of a sudden you got big open lots and so on. Take a ride through it. I think you'll be interested to see it.
Was that a conditional use development, Rohit?
Amber Meadows was. Amber Meadows is a conditional district, which was allowed in the past and has now been removed from our ordinances from being allowed. But yes, that was the way that they allowed this type of district. It was a conditional use district.
did it need public funding for any reason? I don't recall that being.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Did it need public funding? Did it need underwriting in any way from the village?
Chris, you kind of sound a little bit muffled. Like I can't hear what you're saying. Does anyone else feel that way?
No.
I couldn't quite hear you either, Chris.
Okay, how's this? Is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, I was just asking, did that development need any kind of public funding? I don't recall that being the time.
Public funding? I don't think there's any public funding. This is built by Pulte.
Yeah, so guys, what I kind of remember in this is we started allowing these communities, and when we allowed for them, all of a sudden we just started getting inundated with applications. And so we allowed, I think, 3 of them ultimately, and then said, you know what, this is getting crazy. We're going to have these everywhere. I believe then council backed off from that. And again, I think if history, the lessons that I kind of learned from it was it belongs in certain places, but not others. And I think Amber Meadows is a good location for it because it separates Tullamore from Ray Road. It might make sense in the town center.
And you know, it was considered for that kind of use back then, back when it was proposed as kind of a town center, but it was denied. That was the idea for there to be a transitional, you know, mixed use area. And it kind of, even though it was denied and they de-annexed the commercial area, it still ended up becoming something like that. There's Tullamore Conservation Subdivision, Amber Meadows, age-restricted patio homes, and then a commercial area. And that's fine. That's actually, it's fine. It's good.
But, all right, so why do small, you know, houses like that have to be age restricted?
They don't. That was the only way that Marvin was willing to consider it in the past. But of course, in this context, the other reason to consider it is its proximity to the village center. It does not have to be age restricted.
Yeah.
If you're, I think the applicable thing for today is if we were to offer a denser residential piece along Newtown Road, you really would want it to be age restricted, because if you're talking about a lot like smaller homes, more dense, gosh, I am echoing in somebody's feed there, but you don't want a bunch of families moving in and have like 40 families living there, and then you've got a bunch more kids enrolling in school, and you need to age restrict it if you're going to have that dense of a housing district.
That's a possibility.
That was certainly the thought when this one was put in place. These are $500,000 and $600,000 homes, though. You know, again, I don't know how many young families with small children are going to be able to afford $500,000 and $600,000 homes.
It's just something to consider, though, because we do need to protect the schools.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I think that's a conversation for later.
Yeah.
It's extreme to be able to age in place.
So let's see. We are at this step here. Let me turn back on the satellite. To allow, let's see, Odell's, Priebus, and Let's property, as long as they're only residential.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Let Junior, not.
Yeah, let Junior. This is the triangle piece here. And another contingency I wrote from before is that one of these two entrances has to be a roundabout for the sake of reducing speeds around this curve.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
And is there anything that could be done about Newtown Road there, or is that?
I'm just gonna say that it is very unlikely that any realignment is possible. At most, maybe curbs, but we'd have to pay for it. And so the other, the best solution really is, as Chris said, some sort of chicane, which in this case would be a roundabout intersection. It would force
especially in
people.
light of NCDOT's financing these days.
Yeah. Okay. So then, I mean, I think I separated Phil Brick's house from the rest of the conversation on purpose because I still think, there is, I mean, it is adjacent to the commercial area, and he's absolutely been dying to just use his house as an engineering office, which we can then prescribe similar uses, like in its own zoning envelope after he leaves. It's not really out of the question, and I can show a few examples of places where you have, a commercial use that barely looks different from the residential use right next to it, and it just works. See, go to.
I don't necessarily think we have to go down this road. Someone needs to talk to the codes.
Sure. I guess the we can still leave since we've left the previous Odell properties as in the village center contingent on residential. We can still leave TJ's as in the village center contingent on conversations with codes. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a real problem with that concept.
Yeah. I mean, this is a house in a place that I went to. It's called Bluffton, and the house. This is a commercial building, and you could not tell. You know what I mean? Like it's got a driveway off the main road, just like TJ is asking for, and the only way you could tell is by this residential sign or this the sign that indicates what commercial use it is.
What type of use is it? You remember?
I don't quite remember what this one is, but I do remember down the street. There's a neighborhood back here which is too new for the street view, but down the street there was a law office. Let me just zoom right down on it. Yeah, this is a law office, and right behind it, right next to it, there are residences. And if you didn't see the sign, you just couldn't tell. They did a project like kind of what we're thinking here in Marvin, and that's why I went down there to check it out. And I think it really looks great.
I don't think it's a matter of looks, Rohit. It's a matter of having, instead of a family of 4 or 5, now having 10 employees coming and going, next to your home where you have a child. It's not the look. It's you've got all different kinds of people coming and going in a commercial property next to a family.
Fair enough. So I think this conversation.
How do you regulate? Sorry, how do you regulate? Like, if there's construction trucks, or there's they store building materials or whatever. I know it's a design, it's an engineering firm, but who's to regulate that? Like, who's to say what they can and can't put on their property? And these poor people have to look at it.
Well, technically, we could regulate that.
You don't do your yard, so.
Technically, we could regulate that. That's the purpose of the zoning envelope. We could tell them what they can and can't do with their property, and I mean, there's a way to regulate everything that you don't what you don't want to see. That's all I think I can say.
It's sort of the flip side of Robbie's property. He's surrounded by, residential and, and now we're saying, well, we're going to have this one island of, it's not heavy commercial, but it's an office. In the middle of.
I guess the difference between Robbie's is that in Robbie's property, there's plenty of room to put a buffer. In this case, they really just have to be right next to each other. TJ is chatting.
We're talking about residential in some form or fashion on all of that, property there, with the exception of that one. And that just doesn't smell right.
Right. TJ is
I know
chatting.
that's what- But
He's saying in the chat if he'd like to speak, if that's okay with you.
sure.
Okay. TJ, if you heard that, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, with respect to everything that's being said, I hear what you're saying about the Coates. They've been living there a year and a half. I've lived here for 21 years on this property. The roundabout that is being installed is causing the greatest encroachment upon me of anybody. As a matter of fact, it's causing basically no encroachment on anyone but me. It's causing me to realign my current driveway and take it through the middle of my front yard, deleting my front yard from what it is. Basically, I'm trying to remain a little calm right now. I don't agree with Kelly Cates and I don't agree with John Jones. That's simple. The best use of my property has been transitioned by other planning and this roundabout into a commercial property, not a residence. If you want to talk about depreciation of a property, mine's getting depreciated by roadway. The Coates have been here a year and a half, they got a baby. I don't care. I like them. They're my neighbors. They're great people. But you can't, if your only reason is them, that's not right. You're basically saying they're more important than my interests. And I know you're rolling your eyes and you don't agree, but that's what you said multiple times. I'd like to understand, you're also talking about having high density housing, transitional housing. Multiple times you said, I don't see how you can have a 1 acre, $1 million house right beside an ice cream shop. I believe that was Paul who was bringing that up. Why is my house the only one that is okay for that to happen? The roundabout's basically going to be in my driveway. It's transitioning my house from what it was 21 years ago when I moved here. I've lived on this road my entire life. I grew up at 4618 Newtown Road. I've lived on this road my entire life. I'm not asking for something here that I think is in any way out of the way. This is not going to be any more of a negative impact on the Coates' residents than putting that roundabout is. My value of my home is being significantly impacted. I've had it investigated. I can limit that and make myself somewhat close to whole by being able to put something as docile as an engineering office there. And I understand what you're saying about, well, how are we going to keep him from doing this and keep him from doing that? Rohit's telling you how. You write it into documentation that says you cannot do this on this property. I mean, unless your documents are useless and they're not going to have any power, and someone can come in and tell them not to do, which I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't know what else I can say. There's two people against this. I can see it. I don't know why. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I don't think your reasons are valid. John, you haven't given a good reason yet. You just said, I don't like it. Kelly, yours is you don't want to impact the Coates. What else have you got?
Well, TJ, let me just say this, first of all. I absolutely agree with you that you are getting the raw end of the deal.
Of every deal. Every deal.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I've been with you from the beginning on that. And my concern is that your property is surrounded by residential.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's going to have residential on front of it and to the left. The rest of it's going to be roundabout and what you guys are allowing to be retail or commercial. It's not surrounded. It's got two properties adjacent and one's across the road.
Well, no, you've got Odell behind you, which will be residential, as well as.
You're gonna let that be higher density housing than I'm allowed to have.
He's been approved for a rural.
That's not what you're talking about approving him for. You just voted and said he can have higher density.
We were talking about the previous property.
No, you're talking about both. I can see it. It's grayed in right now. You're talking about just Priebus. You got Russ Odell's property in there.
Yeah, we really didn't talk about, we haven't really talked much about Odell's property.
Look, it's in there. Rohit, take it off right now and say no. Vote against it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I bunched them together because I mean they're pretty much the same effect. You know, there's two properties outside of the village center, and so if you're going to extend, you know, higher density housing to Priebus, then it doesn't make sense for Odell's not to have that same extension. And the reason why that's under discussion again is because the HOA of Meadowlark does not allow Russ to construct his neighborhood with entrance on Meadowlark Lane. So we're talking about, you know, this potentially two entrance development off of with only entrances off of Newtown Road. Well, that said, I think
the development would only be on Newtown.
well, this Odell and Priebus, I mean, they may be doing something together. They may be doing something separate. That's not really of our concern. But the idea is that Russ was not able to get the construction easement from Meadowlark Lane, so he wants the opportunity to redo, you know, this development and have an entrance on Newtown Road. And this discussion is a time to maybe give him another opportunity to have a village center type housing development. That's why I bunched them together. They're the same. They're not going to be the same development, but they're the same talking point.
Basically, you guys are trying to restrict me even further than this roundabout's doing, and the consideration has been very minimal in my opinion. And the reasonings that you're giving are not good. Because you don't want the coach next to me to have a business beside him. That's not, come on.
But that is.
I understand John saying between roundabouts, but yet you're going all around the outsides of these roundabouts and coming up with all these other schemes that you can come up with. Which is it?
Well, what I said,
Roundabout in my yard.
my reasoning was that the commercial would stop at the roundabout. You know,
Yeah, and my house is literally touching this roundabout, so I'm not sure why coming over like 3.5 inches is a problem. The other reason given is I'm touching the coach's property, and they moved in a year and a half ago, and yes, they've got a $800,000 house. So what? Mine's worth more than that. Give me more reasoning than that. Why would you turn something like this down? Rohit, have you sent them the picture by chance that I sent you of the building in Pineville?
I wasn't able to send that picture, but I can, because you texted it to me, so I can't put that on the screen. But I can.
This is basically no different than the roundabout. I had no say in that whatsoever. It was forced upon me. And now this is an opportunity for me to be made whole, or at least close. And I don't think there's really serious consideration being given to it. I really don't. By John or by Kelly. I do believe that a couple of the other guys up there were actually thinking about it. East Boulevard was a legitimate comment. I know it's in Mecklenburg County, and I heard you, Kelly, say you're against development. I heard you say it in this meeting.
I'm against Mecklenburg County?
No, you're against development. You're against some of this stuff.
I'm against high density. I'm against high density. Yeah, but I still want the planning board.
Delete the Odell and Priebus properties. Delete their properties from what you're allowing tonight.
I have to be on the planning board and look at what is best for everyone.
No, you're not doing
Make
that.
decisions that don't benefit me.
You're not doing that. You're looking at, you said the coach. You're taking the coach's interest over mine. Until you give another reason, you're taking the coach's interest over mine.
We're just going to disagree. I believe that being surrounded on two sides by residential, we talk about a transitional.
I'm not surrounded. Two sides is not surrounded. I have retail or commercial right up against the same roundabout that is touching my property.
He's got a point
They're
there.
doing the slow down lane for the roundabout in my front yard.
Well,
This basically is becoming a commercial property, not at my own choosing, and you are disallowing it from becoming a commercial property, which is its now best use. Once that roundabout, I realize it's 2 years from now, that's going to be its best use, and you're just saying, no, I'm not going to do it.
Hey,
I
John,
didn't-
can I ask a
actually, I
question?
did say no.
Kelly, can I just jump
Yeah.
in?
No, you can't.
Are we, just conceptually, I didn't think we were quote unquote voting at this point. I thought we were just throwing out concepts and discussing in general ideas about this area.
Yeah, we're not finalizing and voting on the future land use map tonight. There's no way.
yeah, we're a long way from that. This is,
I just want to be clear, my thoughts, that's all I'm doing right now is expressing some thoughts about the spaces I'm seeing, and I'm asking questions about, well, what do you do about the fact that the other side of the street isn't, this side of the street is, and so on. So I just wanted to try and clarify that I'm not sure I want to go past the roundabout either, but if we do, here's some ideas about how it might look.
Mm-hmm.
Up until now, I wasn't clear what any of those 3 small properties we were going to do with either, right? I mean, I'm just looking at this big picture, trying to understand what to do with it. So we've got a gentleman on the line. He's obviously upset. He's frustrated, and it's understandable. But no decisions have been made, as far as I understand.
Well, and that's not true, because Rohit asked if you guys want to take these properties off of the consideration list, and he was taking them off one by one. And it
Right.
sounded like mine's headed down that same direction. Do we take it off or do we not? And if those other properties are actually still on the board, then fine. But I don't think they are. He deleted them, and they're off.
Right, but this is not the vote. Each of these sections that we're talking about is not a vote on its own. We're probably gonna vote. I'm gonna put this final version, maybe not even at this meeting. No, definitely not at this meeting. But in a later meeting, I would put the final map up, and then the planning board can vote on it. None of the things that have happened so far were an actual vote.
Well, what we do here is we make a recommendation to council, and then their vote is what actually dictates.
I know that.
So you're
But if they
expressing.
don't ever recommend it, they'll never consider it.
Kelly's expressed hers, and John's expressed his, and I've expressed mine. At this point, these are just concepts and ideas that we're bouncing around.
I also, TJ, I didn't flat out say no. I said someone needs to talk to the Coates family. So no one's even taking your property off. I'm asking Rohit to reach out to the Coates family. Everyone else has been reached out to. I don't understand why they haven't been contacted.
I haven't
I
got
actually
there.
talked to the coach, and unless they change their tune, he said said he thinks he respect. Doesn't mean that's what he's going to say. If he was okay with it with me, doesn't mean he's going to say that to Rohit. I don't know. We know
Wait.
across the street that her parents apparently said they're okay with it. So that leaves one entity that this hinges on apparently, and that's the coach.
I just haven't gotten the contact information. But TJ, did you just say that you speak into the codes?
now, I think that this whole conversation is where I said, at the beginning of the meeting, this brings about, things that we may not even recognize at first. And quite honestly, I did not recognize evidently the huge impact of the roundabout to your property.
It's not shown on the map, John,
Yeah,
so it's kind of
I'll-
hard to see it.
I'll pull it up here. I've got it on screen share. If you can see my screen, you can see this house in the lower left is TJ's property, and they have to. Huh?
No,
You need to share that.
Right now, I'm seeing a gray screen,
A gray screen? Nothing?
Yeah, nothing.
gray and black.
Huh.
Reload it, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. 1 second. Okay. How about this?
There you go.
All right, sorry. So here is the roundabout final sketch of it. And in the lower left corner, we have TJ's house. And so what they needed to do to give him full access from his driveway is realign his driveway to basically be in the middle of his property where previously it was on the far left. That's what he's complaining about mostly. Also, a part of the roundabout will be in his property, which is that, if he's saying essentially, if the roundabout is taking up so much of his property, then it would be a fair trade to allow him to have a simple commercial use, is the essence of his argument, as I see it.
Rohit, point out the coats for me, please.
The Coates is on the left of his property. It's actually not even built at the time of this screenshot.
I got you.
And if I recall, I mean, that plan is going to basically take out the leach field from the septic system. So there's a little more to it than just moving driveway, I think.
Yeah. So the DOT has to remove his septic tank, and the whole cost of the project includes building a sewer line up to his house from the preserve.
And to the right, help me out, to the right of TJ's is...
Mr. Odell's property.
Immediately to the right is Odell's, yes, and then it's Meadowlark Lane, and then Scott Lett's house is on the right here.
So in between the two red lines is Meadowlark Lane?
Yes, this strip right here is Meadowlark Lane where it sits currently.
And Meadowlark will have that yellow to get into the roundabout?
Yeah, Meadowlark is being realigned, like as
Gotcha.
this curve shows.
So TJ gets into the roundabout how?
He has the driveway, and the driveway is being realigned. This blue curve here. His driveway is being realigned to be outside of the roundabout. So what he's saying is,
You would want this done to you.
No, I get it, TJ, but so if he's traveling down towards South Carolina, how does he turn in? Can he turn to his house?
he can turn left out of the roundabout into his driveway. He has expressed to me that that's not comfortable.
It's a wonderful turn.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah. All right, blow that back
I would
up.
like for everybody to study that for about half an hour when you get some spare time. Think about the ability of me to sell this house ever to anyone.
And TJ, you were proposing what? That you have an engineering office?
Correct.
You have an engineering business, and you would. So right now, this is a residential home, correct?
That is correct, and I'm proposing that it be made something that is like commercial, and I mean along the lines of only allowed to be office space for like legal services, engineering services, anything like that. So however restrictive you wanted to make it, was something that was professional, office oriented, no visitations, no doctor's offices, nothing like that. So you could ever have hate turnover.
All right.
TJ, whatever happened to you potentially having a driveway that went through Russ's property and then attached to Meadowlark, or attached to the roundabout, the realignment?
Well, there were me and Russ talked about that a lot, and the issue is, number one, when we started talking about that, the roundabout, the funny thing about this was the roundabout was initially planned to be way further east.
Yeah.
Then they moved it west. I pitched a fit. They went back and said in their redesign, they moved it further west. It said, in further consideration, we decided we're going to just push it further over to you. And Russ needs all of his property that he's got to facilitate his rural subdivision at this point. And cutting my driveway through someone else's property, because that's a 2-acre lot that's right there beside me. There's no way, I mean, you'd be eating through somebody's property based on the restrictions that he currently has. And it's just not a possibility. Yes, we talked about it. Yes, it was on the table in the past, but I do not think that's a viable option at this moment.
Yeah, so that was on the table. Phil, TJ
I have
discussed.
to go back and look at Russ's proposed development to see, is there right now a house plan for that section right next to you?
No, that would be a gap.
No, you can't put a house on it. It's going to be behind me.
Like the first house would be here.
Yeah, down below.
I think his street comes out there through that lot.
Yeah, exactly. The street, if you can see my cursor, the street comes out and connects to the public section of Meadowlark. So there's no room to build a house here, and that's why TJ is talking to Russ about connecting his driveway here. But that was when his house would be residential. He's also discussed recently, as he said, that if he was allowed his engineering office, that driveway would just be in the front yard, and that he would be fine with that. Connecting to Newtown Road, that is.
The driveway would still be that blue-looking stream on the.
Right, but he would want it a little.
Right.
He'd want it a little further to the left, so that it doesn't have to be that close to the roundabout. That's what NCDOT is gonna do if NCDOT was gonna pay for
Cut
it.
out, Rohit.
Yeah, what?
You just cut out. I couldn't hear what you're saying.
Okay. If NCDOT were to realign his driveway at their cost, this is what they would build. But TJ,
Which is the cheapest thing possible.
right? So TJ is saying if he were allowed his engineering office, he would want the driveway to be a little further to the left, further than.
Safely get in and out.
Yeah, so he can still have full access movement from what NCDOT drew here, but that's uncomfortable. It's under their standards, of course, but it's very uncomfortable to make that left right out of the roundabout. So he'd proposed to put the driveway a little further left in his yard.
TJ, would you also be willing to, like, if we were to consider this a light commercial use, would you be able to add a tree buffer, like do plantings along that side between your house and the Coates house?
The answer is I would follow whatever guidelines Marvin had. And I know Mecklenburg County, and I went back to Mecklenburg County again. I realized they actually do that. They require tree plantings and stuff. The answer is yes. And I do whatever the restrictions or requirements are. I'd facilitate it. By the way, that driveway you see right there on the left of the picture.
Mm-hmm. This one here?
Yeah, right there. That's actually a driveway easement that was supposed to serve my property. That belongs to the Coates. But it's a driveway easement that's supposed to serve my property. I don't use it.
Two of you were going to share that driveway?
No, they don't. That's not their driveway. That's actually not it. Their driveway is actually in the trees over there.
So what is it then?
It's just an easement for a driveway. I'm just telling you what that is. That's actually their property. That's their house construction.
Okay, it's nothing.
It's basically that raw piece of dirt you see right there.
Yeah, it looks like it's concrete. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's gravel. It's white rock.
I got you.
So that could potentially be planted up.
Yes. Yeah, it could be planted up. Yeah, they actually gravelled it in so they could have a second driveway, and they use it to make U-turns. But not always. But that's how they get delivery trucks and stuff to come. They come down the driveway and through their yard and tear it up and then leave. That's what they do.
It might be that when someone talks to them, if they're okay, if they're fine with that they also might not need a buffer. Who knows? Someone just needs to talk.
I think they want a buffer because they planted trees themselves. It's just they're dying. I don't know what they planted, but they weren't very hardy, whatever they are.
TJ, please understand that I understand. I do empathize with you that you are getting screwed, and I think that we can definitely consider this. But
I would appreciate that.
It's nothing personal, and we'll do what we can within the boundaries of our role.
I appreciate that, and what I ask is legitimate consideration of this with the impacts that are happening, not just to the Coates, but to me, with respect to the property, and it not be just because someone's uncomfortable. I would like just serious consideration given to this. Think about the legitimate impacts that it might have. If I'm impacted at a level 90 and the Coates are impacted at a level 5 or 10, just be considerate of that. That's all I ask.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
The look of what's there would not change. What you see right there is what you would see. That's why I wanted Rohit to show you a picture I sent him tonight of a historic structure that I did in downtown Pineville. It's a house. It's on the Charlotte Historic Register for Historic Places. And I totally redid it. It looks just like it did the day it was built as a house in 1921. And it is a photography studio. You'd never know it if there wasn't a sign in front of it that said photography studio. gravel driveway, everything about it smacks of somebody lives in that house.
Yeah.
But there's a photography studio inside of it.
All right, I will share from my phone if you guys can see this at all. Does this come through on the camera?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That's at 29 Main Street in Pineville, if anybody wants to look it up.
I know what that is. That they take, yeah, they're like a big photography company.
They do schools. That is correct.
Yeah,
They bought it from me the moment I got it finished.
Yeah. I know that exact building. It is very nice.
And you're saying you built that, TJ?
No, I'm saying it was built in 1921. I bought it, gutted it, and restored it per Mecklenburg County requirements for historic landmarks.
Okay,
And then I
into
sold it
a commercial use from a residential one?
That is correct.
Okay.
I basically went through all the change of use requirements.
Wow, so you have a track record. That's great.
Yes. And that's not why I bought this house that I'm living in. That's not why I built this one, which I did build this one, and I didn't build it to do that.
Would you ever consider staying and making, continuing it to be your home?
No.
You were able, okay, so that's not even an option anymore for you.
I have 4 kids, and this roundabout is making things non-conducive for me. I know the Coates have 2 kids, I have 4, and my daughters drive, and they have to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old son that's getting ready to start driving, and I don't want any part of it anymore.
So even if we couldn't work out getting you attached to Meadowlark?
Probably not. Initially, when the roundabout wasn't sitting where it's sitting,
Yeah.
and it was the original drawing that I first saw some 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, I would have considered it because the impact was very minimal. But with what's going on now, it's just, no. Because there's going to be cars coming around that roundabout at night, and every one of their headlights are going to flash into my house every single time somebody does that loop. Every single time.
I didn't think about that particular part.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many negatives about that thing to me, and I know it's a positive to the town. I get it. I understand that. But I'm having to carry the benefit for the town with a huge punch in the gut.
Yeah.
No, thanks for speaking up, DJ. Very good points.
Thanks,
Thanks,
I'm
T.
sorry I was angry, but this gets to me because this is my biggest investment of my life.
No, you have every right. No worries. It's not personal, just want to be good.
I know. I'm going to shut up now and let y'all go. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a lot more to talk about, on this whole thing.
Absolutely.
Before we come to any finalization. And Rohit said, 2 meetings. I think, based on our track record, I think it's going to be more than that. But it's going to be.
This is probably the only real sticky part. I mean,
Well, I'm not sure that it's only one. I think the 2 ends are the more difficult part.
Yeah, there are some conversations that are going to have about middle properties, but they're really straightforward.
Yeah, so the 2 ends of the district are going to be the most difficult part of it. And we're already at 9:39.
You ready to have a hard stop, John?
Not cutting this short because it's not over yet. But I think we have to resume this next time.
Well, hopefully next time we'll be in person as well. I think that that helps.
Yeah, and then maybe by next time I'll also have reached out to the Coates so we can have a more thorough conversation about all of this. And so I hope, I've tried my best to reach out to all of the property owners, and each time we have a meeting, I reach out to more people. But hopefully by next time I'll have reached out to all of them, and then so we can have a full knowledge conversation about what everyone wants and is fine with.
And maybe we can have some perhaps, Rohit, by then, some better examples of how denser use here's some more example and how we would do it.
Yeah, I'll probably have to draw from places that already exist, because it's very time consuming to draw them myself. But
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about physically drawing, but I'm talking about the concepts and maybe we'll go to the Amber Meadows, and see how that was written or something.
yeah.
All right, can we move on to,
Okay.
what's the next one?
Before you move on, do you want to table this conversation,
Yes,
just for the record?
yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay. Someone make a motion
we're
to
not
table.
finished.
What are you tabling?
The district boundaries.
The whole future land use map, rather, because I don't think we got to the other commercial uses in Marvin either.
Yeah,
Well, you're not technically tabling the item because you've already discussed half of it. So you're basically wanting to add it back onto the agenda to continue discussion. So you're not technically tabling the
I guess
item.
tabling is mean we haven't gotten to it, but continue the discussion.
Yeah, you just continued the discussion, and what you pick up on is the village center district boundary.
Yeah.
Maybe table number 5.
Okay.
Did she just echo?
Repeating herself. Yeah, he's in an echo chamber.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, I heard it.
Someone needs to be
I'm in
muted.
my kitchen, so it probably echoes that way.
No, you're fine. You're fine now. All right. Where we at, John?
Discussion, Construction Professionals Network Institute.
All right.
Knock that out, Rohit, or?
Yeah, this is informational. So you see, we met some people who connected us to some people at the conference that we went to in March, and this is a group of volunteer professionals like engineers, construction, site design, and their interest is simply to help municipalities figure out big projects like this. So they've offered to host us a workshop where they would tell us, what other places have done, all the way down to, all the types of details that we don't know. Mayor Polino has often said, we don't know what we don't know, but these people do know what we don't know. And so they're going to host us a workshop, and this is free to us, June 11th and 12th. And June 11th is going to be in the afternoon, and June 12th is going to be in the morning. And it's going to be on Zoom. So I wanted to extend, the invitation to you guys and to see if if you think maybe a majority or a quorum of you will attend, then we can also open this up to the public. Or if you guys think that maybe only 2 of you will be able to attend, then that's fine. But really, this is mostly informational for us to figure out, from people who have been there and done that, what really goes into a type of district like this and what is possible.
I think it's a great idea, Rohit. I've been asking for this for forever, so I think this is great, and you can count me in as being in attendance for certain.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, this is exactly what we need.
Great.
Rohit, how long are the sessions, each session?
They're about 45 minutes to 1 hour.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
And there's
What
okay, hold on. So there are 4 sessions within a day. So the Thursday is 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and then Friday is 9 o'clock to noon. But then within them, there are 3 sessions each.
Is it a question and answer, or just them providing information?
Yeah, it's going to be a 2-way discussion, but they're just here to tell us, to, 1, understand what we're working with, and then 2, they can tell us, how to accomplish and what is possible, what other places do, and what we can do to succeed in this project, basically.
Rohit, could we get a breakdown? I think it's a great idea. Could we get a breakdown of what's going to be covered in the different sessions? Because I can't be on for 3 hours.
Yeah, of course. And since this is on Zoom, you can come and go whenever you want. Thursday we have a virtual town tour and summary. In
You can send us that information. Right?
Let's,
What you're looking at, you can send to us, Rohit, right?
huh? Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, it's in the agenda packet. I don't have to go over this.
It's okay. Great.
There's basically a couple summary sessions, some case studies, and an analysis, and then their recommendations.
Yeah, page 13 and 14 on the agenda. Got it.
So Rohit,
Yeah.
what's the catch? How come these people are doing this for free? What's the deal here?
I don't think there is a catch. They are partnered with a grant-funded program, so they do get money from the university, UNC. So there is a way that they get money, and but this particular workshop is going to be free for us.
So this is sort of a quasi-governmental group that just does this for towns? Is that
It's not a governmental group in any way. It's really just a volunteer group.
Okay.
Kind of like a Rotary Club, but for engineers, for engineering services.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Well, I will definitely.
Come on, Paul.
Hey, Paul, I'd love for you to come to my Rotary Club.
Do we need any action on this, Rohit?
No, this is just for me to tell you that we found a date, and you should come if you can.
Are you going to send out a Zoom invite to us, Rohit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course.
Because if not, we'd be tuning in telepathically, and I'm not sure that's going to work.
Right. This is a few weeks away, so I don't even think we have the invite link yet, but yes.
Cool.
We also have to, coordinate how, since they're setting up the Zoom meeting, we got to coordinate if this is going to be a potential quorum of planning board, which it sounds like it could be, then we also have to coordinate what kind of Zoom meeting will allow the public to attend. So when we get all those details ironed out, we'll send a Zoom invite.
What is it just 3 of us? If 3 of us are on at one time, it's a quorum?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is fine, because I've already talked to them about it, and they said they're fine with opening it up to the public, as long as the public as long as the public is really not interacting, or maybe they're even open to choosing a couple of representatives from the public to interact. But as long as 99 people aren't talking at the same time, they're fine with public being invited to the meeting.
Okay.
Now, what you can do, John, is you could call a special meeting for that if you anticipate that there's going to be a quorum of the planning board, and you invite the public, because then that constitutes a public meeting if you and do that, open it up to that way. So it probably would make more sense if that's where you're thinking is to maybe consider a special meeting, calling a special meeting and putting out a notice for it.
Well, if we're going to have a quorum, then it'll have to be a special meeting, right?
Well, a quorum, it would be considered a meeting, but if you call for it, then there's no fear of whether or not you have a quorum. You're going to have an official meeting, but you won't have a scheduled meeting, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If it's closer to the time and you see that more of you want to attend, then it makes more sense for you to call a special meeting for that.
Okay, and then, so Rohit, I have to get the details so that we can include that in that notice.
Correct.
Yeah. We already know the day and time, we just need the Zoom. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right.
And a quorum right now is 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because we only have 6 members.
Yes.
Maybe once we get the information, or we get a little bit closer to the date, we can all reply to Barbie and Rohit and just let them know which part of the call we can attend, if we're going to attend at all, so they know how many of us will be on the call. And if we need to call a special meeting, we might not even need to.
Right.
Or you might
And
just,
again, also, since you're not going to take any action at this I would consider a workshop type thing. If you're not going to take any action, then I can just put out a potential quorum notice, and then let the public know that you are not going to be taking any action. It's just for information.
that would be simpler.
That could be another. That would be another option for you to do.
Kind of like that workshop we attended down in Waxhaw.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that actually would be a better way to handle that, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
Because, yeah, there's definitely no action in
Yes,
this
it would
meeting.
be a better way, since you're not taking any action at this meeting, then, that would be a better way to have it. But the safest foolproof way is just call a special meeting for it. But this way I can just put out a, potential quorum notice.
That we're attending a workshop, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Great.
good. Moving action items. Do we have any?
I'm gonna wrap up the land use plan. Sorry, go ahead, Barbie.
I picked up on a couple, and if I don't, if I miss something out, then let me know. Barbie will make revisions to the 4/21/2020 minutes. Rohit will make revisions to the land use plan prior to sending it to council for review. Barbie will send out a doodle poll on dates and times for possible scheduling a special meeting after the consultant submits recommended changes to the ordinances. Barbie will add the discussion of future land use map, village center district boundaries back on the agenda for your June meeting. And then Rohit will research Amber Meadows and what has been done in that subdivision. And then me or Rohit or both will send out the Zoom invite for planning board. And that's all I picked up on. So if there's something else, then let me know.
Okay, we didn't even get to the other land uses in Marvin discussion part of the future land use map, so that has to be added back too.
Yeah.
I put the whole entire thing. I just
Okay.
put the TCD boundaries on there, so that the entire item is going to be back on.
Got it.
And Rohit will reach back out to the rest of the landowners that haven't touched base with them again yet. Sorry, I'm tired.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
All right. We got comments, John?
No, board members have any comments?
I have one question on the land use plan. There was that whole new section 6, 2050 comprehensive plan and so on. When are we going to talk about that?
That's going to be in a couple of months or so. Actually, one thing I didn't even get to yet is we have our planning intern here, Matthew Blasik. He started yesterday, and he will be helping with the comp plan. So that's going to be happening in the next couple of months.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about section 6, 7.
Yeah, not right now. When the council comes back with, I mean, obviously the chapter 1 through 5 is the main text of the land use plan. Council comes back with the comments, and then you guys would revisit chapter 6, 7, and 8. And 7 and 8 are just what, like references, appendices, and all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That comprehensive plan, that's that big thing that's
Yeah.
another major item.
Yeah, it's another major thing, and we'll be discussing it for a while. Again, the state is requiring us to have a comprehensive plan as part of the ordinance, the 160D. So that's why we're getting a jump on it.
Rohit, who's the gentleman there? I didn't catch it.
His name is Matthew Blasik, and he's our planning intern. He just started yesterday.
All right, well, my comments would be welcome, Matthew. Look forward to meeting you next meeting.
Sounds, yeah, same.
Yeah.
Hopefully in person.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
here.
so-
So just,
The masked man in the corner.
yeah.
We still don't know what he looks like. Welcome, Matthew.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, he's been here the whole meeting. I forgot to introduce him in the beginning and just didn't get a chance.
I saw some masked bandit back there, didn't know who it was.
Who you had there, Rohit? Come on.
Sorry.
My only comment is to thank the council for going ahead and taking a look at the land use plan and not waiting for every single thing to be done. It's just going to speed the process up, so I appreciate
I
that.
think they thought so too.
So whoever advocated for us, thank you as well.
That would be John, I think.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. And I see we're back to our normal behavior by running late. I apologize.
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. There's a good late discussion there, which was necessary.
Yeah, it's, like I said, I knew that this was gonna be, some people might have thought that was gonna be, this was gonna be an easy part. I knew it was not.
Yeah. It's good to have, good to hear.
Yep. Nothing else, I'll.
So I heard no other comments from other board members? Correct? Is that what? No other board members wanted to make a comment?
Well, Chris,
The silence would be no.
did you have anything, Chris?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I think everybody's spoken then, Barbie.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Barbie.
Thank you. And so shall we adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, people, stay safe. Hopefully see you in person next month.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.